Wild alligators are thriving inside an abandoned nuclear weapons site. At the Hanford site in Washington, tons of animals are picking up radioactive material from the soil and spreading it across the area. And back in 1954, the crew of the Lucky Dragon No. 5 got hit with nuclear fallout from a hydrogen bomb test, leaving them sick and contaminating their entire catch of tuna. These are horrifying creatures found in nuclear waste dumps. Deep inside a decommissioned US nuclear weapons plant in the southeast, wild alligators are taking over. A BBC Earth episode reports from the front line, followed biologist Laura Kojima and her team as they captured alligators in the contaminated waterways and sediments. So every year they catch dozens of these gators to test for radiation and toxins. They tag them, scan their skin, tails, and internal organs, looking for leftover radioactive material. So far, most alligators seem clean, but since they're at the top of the food chain, they act like the, quote, canaries in the coal mine for the swamp ecosystem. Basically, if radioactive waste starts spreading through the food chain, the gators will be the first to show it. Somehow, though, these things have adapted to live in a human-made nuclear wasteland, living in a swamp that most people wouldn't dare enter. The Hanford site in Washington was at one time a secret plutonium factory for nuclear bombs. It's still one of the most radioactive places in the US, but it's also home to deer, turkeys, wild hogs, and rabbits that scientists have been studying. Researchers found rabbits foraging near contaminated soil with high levels of cesium-137, a dangerous radioactive isotope that sticks around for decades. The Department of Energy and wildlife biologists monitor these animals because they can carry radioactive particles outside the site. Rabbits eat plants growing in contaminated areas and then move around the site and sometimes beyond. Other animals can show traces of radiation too, but the rabbits consistently show the highest levels. So they're super valuable when it comes to understanding how far the contamination might spread. On March 1st, 1954, the Japanese tuna boat Lucky Dragon No. 5 was fishing near the Marshall Islands when the US Castle Bravo hydrogen bomb test at Bikini Atoll went off. 15 megatons, way bigger than they'd apparently expected. Crew members saw this massive flash, and then hours later, a white powdery substance started blanketing the ship. Well, they scooped it up with their bare hands. It filled their hair, their noses, their eyes, even got into their underwear. That dust carried fallout, cesium, strontium, and uranium. The crew got sick right away, with nausea, burns, red eyes, bleeding gums. One man, Chief Radioman Aikichi Kubayama, died in September that year from radiation sickness, making him the first person to die from a hydrogen bomb blast. Other crew members suffered severe symptoms and spent weeks in the hospital. They had to dump 2 tons of tuna once the ship returned to port. They were completely contaminated. The fallout had spread over 7,000 square miles of ocean as well. In some areas contaminated by radiation, eastern tree frogs have been found with completely black skin, a condition called melanism. Scientists think this dark color happens because these frogs produce extra melanin, the pigment that gives skin its color, possibly to protect themselves from harmful UV rays or radiation. Studies near nuclear sites show that these frogs living in radioactive zones developed this black skin over time, which is unusual, of course, compared to their normally green or brown cousins. The extra melanin might help absorb or block radiation and UV light, acting like a natural sunscreen. They're still trying to figure out exactly how this dark skin helps them and whether radiation caused genetic changes or triggered the melanin increase in some other way. Either way though, seeing entire populations of frogs turn black near nuclear contamination zones, that's pretty eerie. In Oneida Lake, New York, walleye fish started appearing with tumors. This comes from exposure to chlorinated wastewater effluent. That's water discharged from treatment plants containing chlorine byproducts. So these chemicals don't break down easily and can build up in the lake. These tumors are obviously a sign that pollution in the lakes has carcinogenic effects, meaning it can cause cancer. Walleye are especially important too because they're popular for fishing, so this is worrying not only scientists, but fishermen and the communities who depend on the lake. Back in the 70s, a coal-fired power plant in North Carolina started dumping wastewater full of selenium into Bellows Lake. Over time, it completely wrecked the fish population. By the early 2000s, the number of fish species in the lake dropped from 24 down to just 6. Most of the fish couldn't reproduce anymore. One study found that 19 of the original 20 species couldn't produce any surviving offspring. Only smaller fish that ate plankton, like mosquito fish, managed to stick around. They weren't affected as badly by the selenium buildup. Eventually, the plant stopped dumping the waste into the lake in 1986. Levels of selenium in the water dropped way down, and they even restocked the lake with sport fish like bass and bluegill. But even 10 years later, the fish were still having trouble reproducing. That's because selenium sinks to the lake bed and slowly leaks back into the food chain, especially if storms stir up the sediment. To make things even worse, some illegally introduced Alabama bass in 2011. They started outcompeting the native bass, especially largemouth. Now state officials are trying to get rid of them by removing catch limits, but the damage is already being done. In the Great Lakes, especially Lake Ontario and Lake Michigan, scientists have seen lake trout hatching with strange deformities. They found fish with weird faces, swollen yolk sacs, which are the little sacs attached to fish embryos that hold the nutrients they need to grow, and they have bloated areas around the heart, symptoms known as blue sac disease. It's caused by exposure to dioxins and toxic chemicals that build up in the water over years from things like industrial waste and pesticides. These toxins settle in the sediment but work their way up the food chain. Fish at the top, like lake trout, get hit hardest because they eat smaller, contaminated fish. The damage mostly shows up in the embryos, so it's affecting reproduction more than anything else. Many of the baby fish just don't survive. These deformities were first spotted decades ago and are still showing up in areas where dioxin levels are high. Even though regulations have cut down on the amount of dioxins going into the lakes, the old contamination is still there. Now, we've talked about all the bad stuff going on with fish, but what about some interesting adaptations? Well, Atlantic tomcod in the Hudson River developed a mutation that lets them survive in waters full of toxins. For decades, the river was basically a chemical dumping ground. Chemicals that usually kill or will seriously harm fish, but scientists have noticed that tomcod have developed a genetic mutation that changed how they process pollutants. Normally, these chemicals get into a fish's cells and start causing damage, but this mutation messes with the pathway the pollutants usually use. Instead, the fish store the toxins in their fat, basically locking them away where they can't cause a whole lot of harm. This trait didn't show up everywhere. It's specific to tomcod that live in polluted water. The downside, though, is that these fish are now heavily specialized to survive in dirty, polluted water. If the environment changes again, even if it's for the better, they might not adapt fast enough. And they're still concerned about predators eating them and taking in those same toxins up the food chain, including people who eat the fish. Killfish are tiny, colorful fish found along the East Coast, often in places no other fish would want to be, like New Jersey's Newark Bay or Virginia's Elizabeth River, where there's a lot of toxic waste. These areas are loaded with dioxins and heavy metals, but somehow killfish are doing pretty well, all things considered. Turns out they've evolved an insane resistance, up to 8,000 times more than normal. Researchers collected hundreds of killfish from different polluted sites and sequenced their genomes. And what they found was that each population had developed similar mutations in the same genes that basically turned off the normal response to these toxins. This kind of resistance is only possible because killfish have super high genetic diversity. For other species that don't have that kind of variation, adapting like this isn't really an option. Again though, there's still food for birds and bigger fish, so there's still a lot of worry as to how all that stored up pollution could affect the rest of the food chain. The Brazilian wandering spider is one of the deadliest spiders in the world. Its venom can cause excruciating pain, and in some cases it's even fatal. But what really sets this spider apart is its style of hunting. Most spiders wait around in their webs for their prey to come to them, but the Brazilian wandering spider actually goes out and looks for its food. They're nocturnal, so at night they roam the jungle chasing down insects, amphibians, and even small mammals like mice. They're big, hairy, and incredibly fast. They'll often sprint after their prey and then pounce on it. If you're camping in the jungle, you might end up with one of these things crawling into your tent. The harpy eagle. This is one of the most terrifying but impressive birds of prey in the world. These things are massive, with a wingspan that can stretch up to 7 feet. They have the biggest talons of any living eagle, some as long as 5 inches, big enough to snatch up sloths and monkeys right out of the trees, which is mostly what they hunt. They're not the type to sit and wait like some birds of prey. Harpy eagles actively roam the jungle in search of their food, often swooping down from a perch to grab their prey. Their preferred hunting ground is the dense lowland rainforests of Central and South America, where they stalk the treetops. They're strong enough to pick up prey that weighs about half their own body weight. And when hunting, they'll grab their prey with those massive talons, fly off with them, and bring them back to their nest. Next up is the satanic leaf-tailed gecko. That's right, we have a gecko spawned from the fiery pits of hell. Forget that gecko from those car insurance commercials. These things look like they were forged from magma. It gets its nickname for a reason. I mean, look at it. Its body is shaped like a dead leaf, and it has a tail that looks like it's been chewed up and spat out. And this is no accident. The gecko's appearance is a way of blending in with the forest environment of Madagascar. And this gecko has the ability to change color. It's not like a chameleon that shifts through a rainbow of colors, but more like it can match the color and pattern of its immediate surroundings. Again, this helps the gecko avoid being someone else's lunch. Also, those eyes. They're huge, reddish orange, and have vertical pupils, super devilish looking. And I love when these things go all red and like lava looking. Really cool. Their eyes are also adapted for low light conditions, helping these geckos hunt for insects in the dimly lit forests. Next up, we have eye-eyes. These things look like creatures you'd see on whatever planet the Greys come from. Just very creepy and alien looking. Eye-eyes are some weird creatures. They're lemurs, but not really the cute fluffy ones that you typically think of. These guys look like they've been pieced together from various different animals. They're just really mangy looking. I don't know, some people might find these cute. I just don't. They have big eyes and bushy tails, which sounds pleasant enough, but their most distinctive feature is their freakishly long, thin fingers. Again, very alien looking. Their middle finger is especially elongated, which is kind of awesome, but they use it for tapping on tree bark to find grubs and insects hiding underneath. There's also a myth that they're a harbinger of bad luck. Some folks in Madagascar, where eye-eyes are again found, believe these creatures are omens of doom, and some think that if an eye-eye points its long, bony finger at you, bad luck is coming your way. Finally, we have Darwin's bark spider. Darwin's bark spider, a small arachnid also native to Madagascar, builds incredible webs. While the spider itself is quite small, its webs are absolutely colossal, sometimes spanning rivers. And they're sturdy too. If you come across one without knowing anything about these spiders, you'd probably think Shelob was stalking the forest. The silk they produce to build their webs is incredibly strong. In fact, it's approximately 10 times stronger than Kevlar. The females, which are bigger than the males, build webs that can sometimes measure around 80 feet across. The strength and size of their webs allows them to capture not only small insects, but also larger prey. Webs are often found with upwards of 30 prey insects caught in them. Back in the 1940s and 50s, the US dropped 43 nuclear bombs on Eniwak Atoll. Decades later, scientists noticed something pretty weird. Sea turtles had nuclear pollution in their shells. Turns out turtles pick up this radioactive material when they eat algae or swim through contaminated water. That radiation gets locked into layers of their shells. Scientists grabbed some turtle shells, even old museum samples, and found nuclear material buried in different layers. One sample collected in 1978 showed uranium in the shell 20 years after the tests had stopped. Off the coast of Greece, there was this story about a pale, mutated, misshapen dolphin. So this photo here was snapped by a man named Harvey Robertson, a Scottish tourist on a boat cruise. It does look pretty damn strange. I mean, if someone in a lab coat showed me this image and said it was a radioactive dolphin, I'd probably believe them. The image first surfaced on cryptid forums where fishermen and beachgoers came forward saying they'd seen it near the Ionian Sea areas, rumored to contain dumped cruise ship waste. Zoologist Dr. Darren Naish from the University of Southampton's National Oceanography Center thinks that if someone took a skin sample from this thing, though, it would probably show a lot of polyvinyl chloride, basically plastic. So yeah, he doesn't really think this creature is real. But what do you think? After the 2011 meltdown at Fukushima, scientists and members of the Tokyo Electric Power Company, or TEPCO, have been testing fish in the plant's inner harbor, and they've come to some shocking results. Well, maybe not all that shocking considering what happened, but still interesting. In May 2022, they caught a black rockfish that was full of cesium-137, 180 times Japan's safe limit. Over a year-long period, they found 44 fish above the limit, caught inside or near the same port areas. These contaminated fish are almost all bottom dwellers that feed off the sediment where radioactive cesium has settled. The sediment was found to have over 100,000 becquerels per kilogram of radioactivity. To put that into perspective, Japan's safety limit for radioactive cesium in food is just 100 becquerels per kilogram. This stuff was literally 1,000 times over the safe limit, so way too dangerous for human exposure, obviously. TEPCO has installed nets to stop this radiated seafood from mixing with safer catch, but even then, a fish caught about 50 kilometers away in January of 2022 was still above the limit, so bottom line is, cleanup hasn't eliminated all radiation in the food chain. In the weeks leading up to the Chernobyl disaster in April of 1986, people in the area started reporting something strange. Sightings of a massive black bird-like creature near the power plant. Workers described it as huge, with a wingspan of over 20 feet, with glowing red eyes that pierced through the fog. Some said it would circle the plant, some claimed it hovered over Pripyat itself, just watching. People who claimed to see the creature often reported being plagued by terrifying nightmares afterward, and there were stories about mysterious phone calls with no one on the other end, just heavy breathing. It would also come on around the same time people would report seeing the bird. Some believe the creature was a warning, an omen, something tied to the disaster that was about to take place. And after the explosion at Reactor 4, the sightings stopped. No one claimed to see the blackbird again. Now, here's something that is totally verified. Inside the ruins of Chernobyl nuclear power plant, scientists discovered something very unexpected, a black fungus that seems to grow toward radiation. This fungus, called Cladosporium sporosporum, I think I'm pronouncing that right, probably not though. Well, it seems to feed off the radiation. Researchers first noticed it because it was spreading on the walls of the reactor's damaged areas. What makes this fungus so weird is that it contains high levels of melanin. Again, that same pigment that gives human skin color. Melanin in this case seems to help the fungus absorb radiation and possibly convert it into chemical energy to grow. It's like the fungus is photosynthesizing, but instead of using sunlight, it's using radiation. When scientists studied it, they found that the fungus actually grew faster when it was exposed to gamma radiation. Not just resistant, it's thriving in an environment that's lethal to most life on Earth. And that's really cool, because now scientists are thinking this fungus could possibly be used for radiation shielding in the future, maybe on space missions. When the Chernobyl disaster happened in 1986, radioactive fallout spread across Europe, settling into forests, soil, and water. Decades later, wild boars, especially in Germany, are still testing dangerously radioactive. The main problem is that these boars love to dig up and eat underground mushrooms called deer truffles, which are really good at soaking up radioactive particles from the contaminated soil. Even after all this time, radiation levels on the surface have dropped as well, but mushrooms keep pulling all that radioactive material up from the ground, and since boars rely on them as a big part of their diet, the animals end up with high levels of it in their bodies. Some samples tested in Germany have shown levels of radioactivity far above safe limits for human consumption. It's such a big issue that hunters who kill these boars are required to have them tested before the meat can be eaten or sold. In a lot of cases, the meat is just discarded. And these radioactive boars have spread all across Europe. migrating and mixing with other populations. A two-headed brown trout was found in a creek in southern Idaho, and it wasn't the only deformed fish in the area. Scientists found more trout with facial deformities, twisted fins, and defective eggs, and it all pointed to one thing: selenium pollution. Selenium is a metal that shows up naturally in the environment, but when it builds up from things like mining or coal burning, it becomes toxic. In this case, the pollution was traced back to operations run by J.R. Simplot, a massive agribusiness company that processes food and chemicals. They funded a study to look into the deformities, and while the report claimed that the selenium levels were safe, others strongly disagreed. Joseph Skorapa, a wildlife biologist with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, said the study was biased and, quote, highly questionable. He pointed out that it completely skipped over the effects on birds and reptiles and seriously downplayed the deformity rates in fish. Meanwhile, in Tennessee, politicians started pushing bills to deregulate selenium altogether. See, the coal industry has a stake in this too. What's happening in one Idaho creek is just one part of a much bigger picture. There's this fish called the Clear Lake hitch that only lives in Clear Lake, California, and some of them have developed a mutation known as pug-headedness, which you can probably form a pretty clear image of in your head. They end up with steep, almost boxy foreheads, bulging eyes, and an underdeveloped upper jaw. Basically, the top half of the mouth doesn't grow right, so it ends up shorter than the bottom, making the whole face look warped. Scientists think this is thanks to pollution, mainly from pesticides and mercury that have built up in the lake over time. The hitch used to be everywhere in this area. They were a big part of the diet for indigenous tribes like the Pomo, and back in the day you could see massive runs every spring. These days, even in a good year, only a few thousand show up to spawn. Some years, barely any. Out in the middle of the Mojave Desert, there's this tiny, deep pool called Devil's Hole. It looks like just a weird blue hole in the ground surrounded by dry rocks, but it's actually a deep water-filled crack in the earth, kind of like a natural well. And inside this tiny pool lives one of the rarest fish in the world, the Devil's Hole pupfish. These fish are tiny, smaller than your pinky finger, and they've been living here for thousands of years. The water is warm, nearly 90 degrees, and has very little oxygen. The fish need that exact setup to survive. It's a very specific environment, but they've adapted perfectly. Until recently. Right now, there are only about 75 of these fish left, and scientists are worried. Their genes are a mess. Scientists have found what's called genetic load. Basically, these fish are drowning in bad DNA, and there's no way for natural selection to clean it out. This leads to what's called an extinction vortex, where the genetic problems make it even harder to survive. Back in the 70s, conservationists built backup tanks to protect the pupfish in case the wild ones died out. But at one of these tanks, some pupfish from a nearby but different species snuck in. Their babies mixed with the DNA and grew way faster and healthier, even sprouting extra fins. The hybrids exploded in number, which showed biologist Andy Martin that introducing new genes was probably the solution here. Martin thinks the Devil's Hole pupfish could be saved if they bring in a few of these cousins from a spring just a few miles away. But some conservationists hate this idea. To them, it's not really saving this specific species of fish if you're changing their DNA. Nanosilver. That sounds like an anime attack, but this is a real particle causing mutations in fish. Silver nanoparticles, tiny particles smaller than viruses, are used in over 200 consumer products because they kill bacteria on contact. Scientists are now worried these little particles might be messing with the environment and wildlife. When silver nanoparticles wash down drains, they end up in rivers and lakes. Darren Ferguson, a researcher at the University of Utah, tested these particles on zebrafish embryos in the lab and found some pretty scary mutations. Some of them became, quote, extremely distorted, almost making a number 9 or a comma instead of a linear fish, he said. The particles caused deformities in eyes, tails, and most disturbingly, their hearts. And here's something pretty scary. Zebrafish actually have organs kinda similar to ours, so this could hint at risks for people too. Scientists still don't know exactly what this means for us or the planet long term, but the Environmental Protection Agency said the same special properties that make nanoscale materials useful are also properties that may cause some nanoscale materials to pose potential risks. In California's Kesterson Reservoir, a big environmental problem popped up because of selenium pollution. Selenium is a naturally occurring element, but when it builds up too much, it becomes toxic. In Kesterson, the water got contaminated with high selenium levels, mainly from irrigation runoff. The fish there, especially embryos, started coming out with serious deformities. Some had messed up eyes or were just missing them completely. There were deformities in their fins, the brain. Scientists call this cluster of problems Kesterson syndrome. And it's not limited to fish because the birds eating them also suffered. Birds have been found with deformed beaks, legs, and wings. The gaboon viper is a snake found in the jungles of Africa. They can grow pretty large, up to 6 feet long, and they're built to blend in with their surroundings. Its pattern looks almost like dead leaves or tree bark, so it's nearly impossible to spot unless you're looking carefully. But when it feels threatened, it strikes fast, and their fangs can grow up to 2 inches long. The venom is highly toxic, causing rapid, painful swelling, intense pain, and possibly severe shock. The area around the bite can blister up, you might see bruising. In more serious cases, the venom messes with your entire body, can cause uncoordinated movement, make you lose control of your bladder or bowels, and cause your tongue and eyelids to swell up. Eventually, it'll lead to convulsions, loss of consciousness, your BLOOD might stop clotting. If the bite's bad enough, doctors might need to surgically remove tissue or even take off an entire limb. You get the point. This can all get pretty life-threatening. Even after being treated, healing takes time, and there have been cases where people have died during recovery. And a lot of bites occur because people will just accidentally step on these things. That's how well camouflaged they are. Plus, they move quietly. They don't rattle or hiss before they attack. They just sit there waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The Goliath bird eater is this massive tarantula found in the rainforests of northern South America, like Brazil and Venezuela. It's the largest spider in the world by weight and size, and its leg span can reach up to 12 inches or 30 centimeters. They spend most of their time in burrows, only coming out at night to hunt. You'll mostly find them in the Amazon rainforest, hiding in marshy, swampy areas. In terms of what they eat, well, you'd guess it's birds, based on the name, and yeah, they'll eat a bird if they feel like it, but birds don't make up the bulk of their diet. The fact that they can, though, is just horrifying. They'll mostly eat large insects, frogs, and small reptiles. How they eat is also super icky though. A bird eater will drag its prey back to its burrow and then suck out all its liquids, kind of like a chupacabra. And when threatened, the Goliath bird eater gets defensive. It'll rub its legs and abdomen to release tiny hairs that'll irritate your skin and mucous membranes. It can also bite. Thankfully, their venom isn't deadly to humans, but it is painful, a bit like a wasp sting in terms of pain. But who cares about the venom? We're talking about a 12-inch spider. If that doesn't give you the ick, I'm really not sure what will. A giant African land snail is a pretty incredible looking animal. They really live up to the giant title. I mean, look at these things. For a snail, that is downright terrifying, but these creatures aren't as exotic as you'd think they are, at least not now. Originally, in the jungles of Africa, these snails have been causing a lot of trouble around the world as an invasive species. They're found in urban areas and agricultural land nowadays, where they wreak havoc on crops and spread disease. They like to hide during the day, typically in shady spots like leaf piles or tree trunks. They're most at home in warmer, humid environments, but they can tolerate a wide range of temperatures too, even freezing cold. They can also survive without food or water for long stretches of time by sealing themselves in their shells. And this adaptability makes them pretty dangerous when you consider the fact that they carry a parasite that can cause a dangerous form of meningitis in humans. If you eat one of these things raw or even touch one, at times you could get infected, and this parasite can be life-threatening. These giant snails also transmit plant diseases, so farmers absolutely hate these things. There have been times when flamethrowers have had to be used to try and eradicate them. Bullet ants, found in the rainforests of South America, aren't just any ordinary ants. These things are known for having the most powerful sting in the insect world. The pain is said to feel quite literally like being shot, and the pain lasts for hours. Some will even say up to 24 hours. And during that time, it's almost impossible to think about anything else. I would probably rather die than go through that. It's so bad that people have described it as feeling like fire walking over your skin. Bullet ants are pretty large too, about the size of your pinky. And they aren't shy creatures. They're super aggressive and territorial, so if you get too close to their colony, expect to feel the full brunt of their sting. Their sting is so notorious that some Amazonian tribes will use them for initiation rituals. Young men will wear these gloves filled with these ants, and the gloves are left on for usually about 10 minutes, and they're just bitten repeatedly. Next up, we have bull sharks. Yes, these sharks are often found in the Amazon River as well. They're known for being one of the most dangerous sharks in the world. They're aggressive, territorial, and they can live in both saltwater and freshwater. This means they can be found in places like the Amazon River, where they lurk in murky water, often coming pretty close to the shore. These sharks will eat pretty much anything. They'll go after fish, birds, river dolphins, and mammals, humans included. They're big too. Female bull sharks can reach about 8 feet long and weigh over 290 pounds, while males are a little smaller. But there are rare cases of bull sharks getting even bigger, hitting up to 13 feet. On top of that, they're pretty bulky, with a body shape that makes them heavier than other sharks of similar length. And not only are these sharks one of the 3 shark species most likely to attack humans, they also have an insanely powerful bite. Their jaw pressure can reach up to 1,330 pounds of force, which pound for pound is said to be the strongest bite of any shark species. To put it simply, they can just crush almost anything with their teeth. Anchoracysta twista is a microscopic predator that doesn't neatly fit anywhere on the tree of life. It's tiny. You'd need a microscope to see it. It was first discovered in a water sample from a tropical coral in San Diego Aquarium. What makes it really weird is how it lives. It hunts other tiny creatures by basically trapping them with a special structure inside its body. When scientists looked at its DNA, they realized it didn't belong to any group that we already know. It's not a plant, not an animal, not a fungus. It's something completely different. Its genes are so unique that researchers had to put it in its own branch of the family tree of life. That means it split off from other life forms a really long time ago and has been doing its own thing ever since. Even its energy systems are unusual. The part of the cell that produces energy has way more genes than almost any other cell we know. Up next, we have a weird little creature called Spinaloricus kinsei. Sounds like a dinosaur, but this is a tiny animal that lives in one of the strangest environments you can imagine. The deep, oxygen-free mud at the bottom of the Mediterranean Sea. Most animals, of course, need oxygen to survive, but this species doesn't. It spends its entire life in a place where oxygen just doesn't exist. Researchers first described it in 2014 after collecting samples from the basin. When they looked at the mud under microscopes, they found this creature and a few close relatives actively moving and feeding. So these creatures were surviving completely without oxygen. That's pretty much unheard of. Inside their cells, these animals are built differently from almost every other animal. The parts of the cell that normally use oxygen to make energy are adapted to work without it, so they can live in conditions that would be fatal to nearly all other forms of life. In 1992, biologists from a joint French-Vietnamese team were surveying wildlife when locals brought them 2 strange skulls with these long, straight horns. The villagers had found them while hunting and brought them over. When the team looked closely, they noticed the skulls didn't match any known antelope, cow, or similar animal. The horns, the shape of the skull, the markings, everything was different. This was some unknown type of large mammal. They named it the saula, sometimes called the Vukang ox. Both males and females have those straight horns, and they have these distinctive white marks on their faces. Even after the discovery, spotting a live saula is incredibly rare. Most of what scientists know come from camera traps or rare sightings from the 90s and early 2000s. They're critically endangered, said to be fewer than 100 left in the wild, and they're so elusive that they're basically one of the rarest mammals on Earth. Way back when dinosaurs were still roaming the planet, long before humans ever showed up, ants were already part of the ecosystem, but they didn't look like ants we see today. In 2025, scientists revealed they'd identified the oldest ant fossil ever found. and it's pretty different from what most people picture when they think of ants. This fossil comes from a rock formation in northeastern Brazil. It's about 113 million years old, older than any ant fossil ever found. The ant belongs to a group researchers call hell ants because of their strange jaws and odd look. This particular species had scythe-like mouth parts that pointed forward, so instead of opening side to side like modern ants, its jaws moved up and down, a very different way of catching and holding on to prey. Another thing that sets it apart is that it probably had wings and a stinger like a wasp, so it probably hunted differently than the ants we see today. About 95 million years ago, long before humans or even most of the dinosaurs you'd heard of were around, there was a small croc-like animal walking around what is now southwest Montana. Paleontologists first discovered it in the summer of 2021, when a student named Harrison Allen spotted something sticking out of a rock in an area called the Blackleaf Formation. It turned out to be a fossil no bigger than the tip of his pinky finger. When he showed it to his professor, they realized he'd found the skull of a juvenile croc relative that had never been seen before. The little creature was nicknamed Elton, partly because the team listened to Elton John's song Crocodile Rock when they worked. But its scientific name is whatever the hell this is. Let me try. Whatever. Elton's skull was only about 2 inches long, and the whole animal is roughly 2 feet from nose to tail as a youngster. Even as an adult, though, researchers think it wouldn't have grown past 3 feet. Tiny compared with most of its crocodile relatives that were around at the time. What really makes this creature stand out isn't just that size, though. Its teeth were this mix of different shapes instead of the usual simple ones you see in modern crocs. Its bones suggest it lived on land, not in rivers or swamps. So that mix of features didn't match anything scientists had seen before. So when they analyzed the fossil, they realized Elton belonged to an unknown branch of croc relatives that lived in North America during the Cretaceous. The velvet worm, a bizarre little predator that traps prey with sticky goo. The lungfish, a fish that can breathe air and survive in drought by burrowing into mud. And the nautilus, a living fossil that's been around for over 500 million years. These are ancient creatures still alive today. Some of the most incredible creatures on Earth have been around for millions of years. The eerie monkfish, with its fishing pole lure, to a creature living in freezing waters with a 1,000-year lifespan. And the gharial, with its unique snout designed for catching fish. These are ancient creatures still alive today. Well, this is a strange-looking creature. It's called the velvet worm. These odd but cute little creatures have been around for over 500 million years. Their appearance hasn't changed much. If you've ever seen one, you might think it's a cross between a worm and an insect, but it's neither. It's in its own branch on the tree of life. And I think I get what makes them sorta cute. It's their soft, velvety bodies. They almost look like little fairy tale creatures. Velvet worms are typically about 2 to 10 centimeters long and have segmented bodies with tiny legs that allow them to move slowly across the forest floor. They don't look like it, but they also hunt in a very interesting way. They don't chase down their prey. Instead, they shoot out this sticky adhesive substance from glands near their heads to trap smaller animals. Then they walk over to their prey and eat it alive, using their sharp mandibles to chew through the body. The adhesive can be so strong that the worm can capture animals several times its size. The reason they've survived this long, seemingly unchanged, is partly thanks to their incredibly efficient hunting style. They've found a niche that works perfectly well for them, so there's no need to change. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Lungfish are some of the oldest creatures to have ever lived on Earth, dating back more than 400 million years. These fish are often considered the closest living relatives to the first creatures that made the transition from water to land. They've evolved a set of highly specialized traits that allow them to survive in environments where other fish just wouldn't. Lungfish can breathe air. A fish that can breathe air. How wild is that? While most fish use gills to extract oxygen from water, lungfish have both gills and lungs, so they can survive in low oxygen environments like stagnant ponds or dried up riverbeds. And when there's a drought, some species of lungfish can even bury themselves in mud and enter this almost hibernation state, breathing air through their lungs until water returns. Gee, I wonder why these things have survived for hundreds of millions of years. While other fish species may have been wiped out during mass extinctions, lungfish have adapted to survive, making them one of the longest living groups of fish. So, cheers to them. The nautilus is one of the most iconic creatures from the deep. When you look at paintings of ancient sea life amongst all the scary extinct monsters, you'll usually see these things as well, but they're still around. The nautilus has been swimming the oceans for over 500 million years. If you've ever seen one, you'll immediately recognize the spiral shell-like structure that it's famous for. The nautilus belongs to an ancient group of cephalopods, which also includes modern squids, octopuses, and cuttlefish. But unlike its more evolved relatives, the nautilus hasn't changed much. It's sometimes called a living fossil, as it's considered one of the oldest species still around today. These things have survived through massive extinction events, and one of the reasons it's managed to stick around for so long is that it's very adaptable in its diet. Nautiluses are opportunistic feeders, scavenging on dead fish and crustaceans and smaller marine life. They're also known to hunt smaller fish using their tentacles. But that shell, it's just beautiful, and a big part of that is because it follows the Fibonacci sequence, a pattern that appears a lot, from the branching of trees to the arrangement of petals and flowers. Sturgeons are massive fish that have been around for more than 200 million years. They were here long before the dinosaurs and have survived through major shifts in the Earth's climate and environment. They're hard to miss. They can grow over 12 feet long and weigh up to 1,500 pounds. They're one of the largest species of fish alive today. Sturgeon are also known as living fossils. They have armored bodies covered in bony plates, and their long, pointy snouts are perfect for sifting through mud and sand in search of food. Unlike many other fish, sturgeons don't have teeth. Instead, they have a specialized structure known as barbels on their snouts, which they use to sense their prey. Sturgeons are bottom feeders, relying on their sense of touch and smell to find things like worms and small fish, again, in the mud down there. They also spend a significant part of their lives in fresh water, but then move to salt water to breed, which makes their life cycle very unique. The tuatara is also called a living fossil, and for good reason. Native only to New Zealand, this reptile is the last surviving member of an ancient order called Rhynchocephalia, a group that lived over 200 million years ago. Despite resembling a lizard, tuataras are not actually lizards, but they belong to the same reptile family. Their closest relatives went extinct a long time ago, and what makes the tuatara even more fascinating is its unique physiology. For example, they have a third eye on the top of their head. It's not very noticeable, but it is there, and it's known as a parietal eye, which is sensitive to light and helps regulate their circadian rhythm. It doesn't work like their other eyes, but it is pretty cool that it's there, and it connects them to more ancient reptiles when their ancestors had more complex ways of sensing things. Another fun fact, the tuatara is incredibly slow growing, and they can live for over 100 years. Deep off the coast of northwest Australia, researchers recently discovered this small, unusual octopus that lives in the deep ocean, thousands of meters below the surface. It's called the carnivore flapjack octopus. It's tiny, only about 4 centimeters across. Unlike the octopuses most people are familiar with, its body is soft and gelatinous, and it has large fins above its eyes that help it move slowly through near total darkness. This octopus has a pancake-like shape, which is of course how it got the nickname flapjack. It can flatten itself to glide along the seafloor or curl into a little umbrella as it drifts with the currents. It's perfectly adapted to life in the midnight zone, hunting tiny worms and crustaceans in almost complete darkness. In 1998, hunters in Laos brought a strange rodent to biologists. It looked unfamiliar, like nothing else in Southeast Asia. When scientists studied it, they realized it wasn't just a new species or even a new genus. It belonged to a lineage of rodents thought to have disappeared around 11 million years ago. This creature, later named the Laotian rock rat, turned out to be the living representative of a group of rodents that fossils showed had been around way back in the Miocene, so tens of millions of years ago. Before this discovery, Western science assumed that entire branch had gone extinct long ago. Instead, it had been surviving in remote forests in Laos completely unnoticed. Back in the summer of 2020, a group of researchers exploring reptiles in the mountains of northern India came across a few brown snakes lying out on a mud road in Himachal Pradesh. Scientists took a closer look at their DNA and realized these were something completely new to science. This new serpent grows to about 22 inches long, and it's noticed by its copper brown color and this faint band around its neck that almost looks like a collar. It has a short head with fairly large nostrils and lots of teeth, which set it apart from similar snakes in the area. Researchers have since found this species in other parts of the region too, and even parts of Nepal. Back in 2000, researchers from the Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute were exploring waters off the California coast with a remote-controlled submersible when they started seeing an odd, transparent creature drifting in the water. They were exploring the Midnight Zone, which is the open water hundreds to thousands of meters down where almost no light reaches. Scientists didn't know what to make of this thing, so they just called it the mystery mollusk. For more than 2 decades, their cameras spotted this thing again and again, more than 150 individual sightings. But it took until 2024 for the team to officially describe it as a new species and give it a name, Bathydevius caudactylus. It's not just a new species, it's so different from known sea slugs that it gets its own family. It has a big flexible hood at one end and a flat tail with finger-like thingies at the other end. Instead of crawling on the seafloor like most sea slugs, this one swims freely in the water by flexing its whole body up and down. It doesn't sink or float on its own, it sort of just hangs in the water, moving slowly or drifting with the currents. It uses that hood like a trap to catch small shrimp-like animals, and strange as it sounds, it also glows. Bits of its body can light up, and it can even drop glowing little pieces of its tail to distract something that might be trying to eat it. Incertasquilla chimera is a recently discovered mantis shrimp that stands out because it doesn't fit neatly into any of the categories scientists normally use for these animals. Mantis shrimp are marine crustaceans. They're not true shrimp like the ones you eat, but they are shrimp-like and known for being fierce little hunters in the ocean. What's unusual about this one, though, is that when researchers looked at it, they realized its combination of features didn't match any known family of mantis shrimp. That's why they had to create this new genus just for it. The first specimen of this species was collected in 2008 off the coast of Western Australia. Since then, more have been found near Japan, showing it lives across a wide stretch of the Indo-Pacific. It's about 3.5 inches long, has striped coloring, and even has false eye spots on its tail that probably help scare off predators. Its claws can unfold extremely fast to catch prey like small fish, and its eyes are very complex, helping it track movement really well. And scientists named it Chimera because of the mix of traits. Makes it look like a blend of things normally seen in several different mantis shrimp groups. That mix is exactly why it didn't fit where anything else fit, so it had to be placed in its own new category.
In 2015, Russian scientists made a discovery that stunned the world. 2 lion cubs perfectly preserved in the Siberian permafrost. But they weren't your typical lions. These cubs belonged to a long-extinct species known as the cave lion, which roamed Ice Age Eurasia. What made the discovery creepy was how well preserved they were. Skin, fur, internal organs, completely intact. One even had whiskers. Even more chilling, their sharp baby teeth suggested they were predators in the making, and possibly a warning of what else is still buried in the ice. In 2018, scientists drilling beneath Antarctica's ice shelf got more than they bargained for. They were expecting bacteria, but instead they found tiny, wiggling marine worms still alive, trapped for thousands of years in freezing dark waters beneath 2,400 feet of solid ice. Nicknamed zombie worms, these creatures had no eyes and survived off the bones of dead whales. The weirdest part, when brought to the surface, they were still alive. It was like something had kept them on pause until we hit play. Imagine coming face to face with a 9,000-year-old beast that looked like it died just yesterday. In 2011, a mummified bison was pulled from Siberia's Yukagir region. Unlike other fossilized finds, this thing was soft, with muscles, internal organs, and even blood vessels still visible. Scientists say it's the best preserved example of its kind ever found, but here's what freaked everyone out. It was in a perfect defensive posture, legs tucked under its body as if it saw death coming and braced for impact. In the Altai Mountains of Mongolia, archaeologists stumbled onto what looked like a human, but wasn't quite. In 2016, they uncovered the remains of a woman buried in ice for over 1,500 years. But something was off. Her body was covered in thick clothing made of felt and fur, but her hands were unusually long, and her feet were wrapped in strange leather boots that resembled hooves. Even more bizarre, locals believe the area was cursed, warning that, quote, demons guarded the body. The mummy's face had been partially frozen and disfigured, giving her a non-human, almost cryptid-like appearance. In 2007, a Japanese fishing vessel hauled up a deep-sea nightmare that had been flash frozen by Antarctic currents. What they found was a giant squid over 33 feet long, preserved in near-perfect condition. While that sounds impressive, what disturbed scientists was the state of its flesh. Bruised, slashed, and twisted as if it had been in a violent underwater battle. Some marine biologists even suggested it may have been attacked by something bigger, something we still haven't discovered. The carcass was frozen within minutes, locking it in a final, twisted pose. You'd think 42,000 years would be long enough for a creature to disappear from memory. Not this one. In 2007, Russian scientists discovered a female woolly mammoth calf named Lyuba in the frozen Yamal Peninsula. What made her special wasn't just the condition, she was almost perfectly preserved with eyelashes and internal organs, but here's the creepy part. Her stomach still contained her mother's milk. Scientists believe she suffocated in mud, then froze so quickly that her last meal never had time to digest, like she was just flash frozen right there in time. In the 1950s, a monastery in Nepal claimed to have part of a Yeti hidden away, preserved in ice for generations. I don't know about you, but when I think of a Yeti, I always think of the Yeti from Monsters, Inc. Snow cone? When explorer Peter Byrne visited the Pangbosh Monastery in 1959, he managed to smuggle part of the mummified Yeti hand out to the west. It was large, leathery, and completely unlike a human or an ape. DNA tests later said it was human, but experts were definitely skeptical. Some believed the tests were rigged to just shut the case down and get everybody to stay quiet, and miraculously the hand disappeared shortly after being analyzed, and the rest of the Yeti remains were reportedly stolen, adding even more mystery to the creature's icy legend. What do you guys think? Yeti, real creature, or just the stuff of legends? In 2021, a Siberian team unearthed what looked like a deformed canine in the ice, only to realize that it actually had two skulls. At first glance, they thought it was just a twisted pose caused by decay, but CT scans actually confirmed the creature had two heads, two spines, and a single set of ribs. It was believed to be a rare Ice Age mutation, possibly caused by environmental stress or even possibly inbreeding. But here's where things get even crazier. The second head was fully formed with sharp teeth and all. Some researchers feared this wasn't a natural deformity, but evidence of ancient genetic experimentation gone wrong. Beneath the Antarctic ice, scientists discovered a fish so strange it shouldn't even be alive. Meet the crocodile icefish, which has no red blood cells and clear, antifreeze-like blood. These fish live in sub-zero temperatures where most animals would freeze solid in seconds. But here's the weirdest part. They evolved this way over millions of years and were found frozen in suspended animation, only to wake up when scientists revived them in lab tanks. The creatures looked alien, with bone-white bodies and hollow eyes, sparking debate over whether life on Earth even really started here. In 2019, a disturbing creature washed up near Casey Station in East Antarctica. Part seal, part something else. The carcass was bloated with blackened eyes and an unnaturally elongated jaw. Researchers said it looked like a mutated leopard seal, but its teeth didn't match. Some speculated deep-sea radiation exposure, others whispered about secret Antarctic labs, and when locals who saw the thing up close started getting sick, the body was whisked away by a government team and never seen again. What was it? Well, no one knows, but it left behind a trail of dead fish and unanswered questions.
Monkfish, also known as anglerfish, are a bizarre and ancient species that have been lurking in the deep oceans for over 100 million years. They have a very unique and eerie appearance with their flat, wide bodies, their enormous mouths, the sharp teeth, the bumpiness. Monkfish just look like something from another time. They live in deep water where there's not much light, so they've developed an interesting survival tactic. They have a lure on their heads, a fleshy filament that they use to attract prey. The lure is similar to a fishing pole, and the monkfish dangles it in front of its mouth to attract smaller fish. When a potential meal gets too close, the monkfish strikes, using its large mouth to engulf the prey whole. These fish are excellent predators, capable of swallowing fish much larger than themselves. They're also super adaptable. They can live in all kinds of depths and at different parts of the ocean, so this mix of flexibility and clever hunting has helped them stick around as long as they have. Antarctic sponges are another incredible example of creatures that have survived for a very long time in some of the harshest environments on Earth. These sponges can live for hundreds, even thousands of years, making them some of the oldest living creatures in the animal kingdom. So why do they live so long? Well, it's a result of the frigid environment, which slows their metabolism. In fact, some Antarctic sponges have been found to grow less than 1 millimeter per year, meaning they can take thousands of years to reach their full size. They're found in the icy waters of Antarctica, surviving in a region where very few other species can handle the freezing temperatures and the constant darkness. Something else very strange about these things is they don't rely on sunlight for energy. Instead, they feed on microscopic plankton and bacteria that drift through the water. Antarctic sponges are also super important for the health of the ecosystem. They provide habitats for other organisms, and they play an important role in recycling nutrients. The gharial is a large crocodile-like reptile native to the rivers of the Indian subcontinent. They're the crocodiles that you've seen in nature documentaries, and you're like, oh wait, what the hell is that thing? Doesn't look like a normal crocodile. With that long, thin snout, it's definitely one of the most unique members of the crocodile family. Gharials have been around for over 200 million years, surviving through climate changes and massive shifts in the Earth's ecosystems. They're specialized fish eaters. Their weird snouts are just perfectly suited for catching fish. They use their sharp teeth to grab slippery fish with incredible speed. Unlike other crocodiles, gharials don't need to chase down their prey on land. They just lurk underwater, waiting for the right moment to strike. Their snouts make them highly adaptable for life in rivers, where they often swim with their bodies submerged while keeping only their eyes and nostrils above water. Unfortunately, despite how ancient these things are, the gharial is now critically endangered, with only a few hundred of them left. Horseshoe crabs are another ancient creature that's been around for over 450 million years. Now, horseshoe crabs aren't true crabs. They're actually more closely related to spiders and scorpions, which is odd. These things have a hard horseshoe-shaped exoskeleton and long tails that they use to steer and maintain balance in the ocean. They live in shallow coastal waters where they feed on small creatures like worms and algae. What's truly nuts about horseshoe crabs, though, is their unique bodily fluids. It contains a substance called hemolymph, which is used in a special test for bacterial contamination in medical devices and vaccines. This test is critical for making sure pharmaceutical products are safe, so horseshoe crabs have still found a way to be helpful after hundreds of millions of years. And their BLOOD, it's also blue, so that's pretty cool. As you can imagine though, because it's so useful in modern medicine, it's also quite sought after and over-harvesting has put horseshoe crab populations at risk, making them another ancient species that may not be around forever. The coelacanth is perhaps the most famous living fossil of them all. These deep-sea fish were thought to have gone extinct with the dinosaurs around 65 million years ago, but in 1938 a fisherman up the coast of South Africa pulled up a specimen, shocking the scientific world. These things are the definition of living fossils. They've barely changed since they first appeared over 400 million years ago. These guys have very unusual fins. Unlike most fish, coelacanths have paired lobed fins, which are believed to be the ancestors of the limbs that would eventually evolve in land animals. These fins are highly flexible, and when the coelacanth swims, it moves its fins in this graceful, alternating motion, almost like it's walking on the seafloor. This adaptation has led scientists to believe that coelacanths could hold the key to understanding how some of the earliest creatures on Earth made that transition from water to living on land. Coelacanths are incredibly rare, living at depths of 200 to 2,000 feet in the Indian Ocean. The goat man has become a big part of the local lore in Maryland, a half-man, half-goat being who roams the woods, particularly around Tucker Road in Clinton and Fletchertown Road in Bowie. Said to be the result of a botched science experiment. The stories really picked up in the early 70s, but some of the rumors go all the way back to the late 30s. Locals reported mysterious disappearances of dogs, which some blamed on a goat creature. Now, of course, some think the dogs might have just fallen victim to trains passing through the area, but that did not stop the tales from spreading. The goat man is often described as having a human-like face, but covered in hair. Some say it looks like a hairy humanoid. Others picture it more of a human with goat legs, almost like a faun from Greek mythology. The creature was rumored to live in makeshift shelters deep in the woods and was said to attack anything it came across, including pets and people. A popular story is that the goat man was once a scientist named Dr. Stephen Fletcher, who worked at the nearby Beltsville Agricultural Research Center. Legend has it that a freak experiment with goats transformed him into whatever this beast is. Folklorist Barry Pearson notes that the legend really took off in 1971, when a dog's death was blamed on Goatman. Bored young folks kept the tale alive, claiming the creature liked to haunt local lovers' lanes. But with all these eerie tales floating around, it's no wonder the Goatman has become a local fixture in Maryland folklore. Next up, we have the Shaver mystery. Richard Sharp Shaver was an American pulp writer who got a lot of attention in the years following World War II. He wrote stories for sci-fi magazines like Amazing Stories. But the thing is, his stories weren't just fiction, at least according to him. Shaver claimed that there was an ancient civilization living underground with advanced technology, and that the government had been hiding their existence for years. This is stuff you're probably familiar with if you watch this channel frequently. Now, he even said he had actual encounters with these beings he called the Deros, short for detrimental robots, who were supposed to be these twisted, degenerate humans who'd gone off the deep end over the centuries. According to Shaver, they kidnapped people from the surface for food and used some sort of mind control tech to mess with people's heads. The whole thing kicked off when Shaver sent a letter to Amazing Stories in 1943, claiming that he discovered an ancient language called Mantong, which he said was the basis for all human languages. Ray Palmer, the magazine's editor, was just very interested in all this, and he published Shaver's stories. One titled I Remember Lemuria blew up and sold out immediately. And for a few years, about 3/4 of the magazine was just Shaver's tales. Some fans were totally into it. Others thought that these were just ridiculous hoaxes. Obviously, the stories themselves were wild, but Shaver himself seemed to be highly paranoid and odd. But even after the magazine dropped his stories, the Shaver mystery didn't just go away. The stuff he wrote about influenced plenty of stories that came later and added to the popularity of conspiracies like the Hollow Earth theory. Whether that's a good thing or not, I'll let you guys be the judge of. Operation Sea Spray was an absolutely insane US Navy experiment that went down in 1950 and was kept secret for over 2 decades. The Navy wanted to see how vulnerable a major city like San Francisco would be to a biological attack, so they decided to test this out in the most blunt way possible by spreading bacteria everywhere. From September 20th to the 27th, they sprayed 2 types of bacteria and Bacillus globigii over the Bay Area. The military thought that these bacteria were harmless to humans, apparently. They released the bacteria from a ship offshore, and based on their monitoring, they figured that pretty much every one of San Francisco's 800,000 residents at the time inhaled at least 5,000 particles of it. Of course, this dose was concerning because it fell within the range of infectivity for anthrax. Just a few weeks later, on October 11th, 1950, 11 people checked into Stanford Hospital with strange urinary tract infections. I wonder why. Although most recovered, one man who had recently had prostate surgery ended up dying from a heart valve infection. Doctors were really puzzled and even wrote a paper about it, since these kinds of infections were pretty rare. Interestingly, there were also reports of pneumonia spikes in the city after the bacteria was released. Surprise, surprise, but the Army never warned local health authorities about this biological blanket they dropped on the area. It wasn't until years later, during Senate hearings in 1977, that Army officials finally admitted to the tests, and they took no responsibility for the spike in health issues. In the years since, there were whispers, though, that these experiments may have inadvertently created mutant creatures. Over the years, some locals said they spotted strange animals that didn't quite look right. Reports of bizarre-looking fish and odd behavior in animals around the bay became more frequent. Most scientists just shrugged off these claims as hoaxes, but the connection between the secretive tests and the appearance of mutated creatures left a lot of people uneasy. Back in 2014, scientists at the University of Rochester Medical Center did something pretty wild. They injected human brain cells into lab mice. They took these glial cells, which support cells in the brain, and put them right into mice's brains. Over time, those human cells started to mix with the mice's own brain cells, and that's when things got interesting. The result? The modified mice ended up having better memory than the normal mice. In experiments, when the researchers played a sound, they followed it with a tiny electrical shock. Well, the mice with human cells remembered the sound way better than the regular mice. When the sound was played, the mice with the human brain cells suddenly became more alert. They remembered being shocked. The normal mice just went about like nothing was wrong. While improving mouse memory does sound cool, it does raise some serious ethical questions. Is it okay to mess with animals' brains like this? And what about the fact that they were using electric shocks to test them? It does make you wonder, where do we draw the line? Plus, if we keep pushing these boundaries, we might end up creating something that blurs the lines between species, and then we'd have a whole list of other moral conundrums to deal with. One of the most unsettling experiments in history was conducted by Vladimir Demikov, a Soviet scientist who started experimenting with dogs in the 1950s. One of his experiments involved surgically attaching the head of one dog onto the body of another, creating a creature with 2 functioning heads. Demikov had wanted to push the boundaries of organ transplantation and understand how the body would react to such a drastic alteration. Obviously, the ethical implications here were huge. The dog didn't survive long after the surgery, suffering from a host of health issues, and a lot of people at the time, and still today, when hearing about it, are just kinda sickened by it. I mean, sure, Demikov's experiments were groundbreaking in a medical sense, but the entire concept of creating a 2-headed dog in a lab just feels like something out of a horror movie rather than legitimate research.
This encounter shook a team of trained soldiers who were certain nothing human could survive outside that night. In 2004, a group of United States Air Force security personnel stationed near a remote radar site in Alaska were sent to investigate a strange alarm triggered on the perimeter fence. Temperatures were brutally low, it was well below freezing, and the wind chill made it feel like the kind of cold that could kill someone in minutes. As a Canadian, I know this kind of cold very well. The team drove toward the section of the fence that triggered the alarm and saw the snow on the ground disturbed by what looked like footprints. But these were not animal tracks. They were the size and shape of human footprints. They continued in a straight line right toward the fence, stopping directly below the alarm sensor. And here is where things made no sense. The
team used thermal scopes to look around. At those temperatures, anything alive should glow bright in a thermal viewer, but there was nothing. No animal, no person, no heat at all. Yet something had clearly walked through the snow moments earlier. When they followed the trail, they discovered that the prints continued beyond the fence and then simply stopped in the middle of an open field. No blood, no body, nothing. This incident was reported internally and discussed by the team for years. Many of them believed they had seen the trail of something that looked human but gave off no heat and somehow vanished in impossible conditions. People in northern Siberia swear a tall, silent figure follows them through blizzards and disappears when approached. In the Yamalo-Nenets region of Siberia, reindeer herders have reported a frightening winter phenomenon for generations. During long migrations across the tundra, herders sometimes notice a tall, dark figure following them from a distance. At first, it looks like a person walking alone in temperatures that should be lethal within minutes. Researchers interviewed several herders who have described the exact same thing. Locals believe this creature only appears in deep winter and is a warning to never travel alone. A police officer insists he saw something that looked almost human crawling on all fours across a frozen Long Island shoreline. In January 2015, a veteran police officer from Suffolk County, New York, was on patrol near a quiet stretch of Winter Beach when he saw something moving slowly across the ice near the waterline. At first, he assumed it was a deer that had wandered too far out, but as he got closer, he noticed the movements were wrong. The thing was crawling on all fours like a person pretending to walk like an animal. He spotlighted it and saw a pale, almost gray body that looked thin and elongated. It did not react to the light, it just crawled across the ice, then rose up on two legs. The officer said it was at least 6 feet tall, but completely hairless. When he tried to get closer to it, it dropped back down and crawled toward the water. Then it slid underneath the frozen edge and disappeared. The officer filed a report with his department describing the encounter, but nothing ever came of it. Residents living near a lake in Iceland claim something massive moves beneath the ice during the coldest months. The Lagerflot worm is one of Iceland's oldest legends, but starting in 2012, locals began reporting very real sightings beneath the lake's iced-over surface. Multiple videos show a long, twisting shape moving under the water, even when the surface is frozen almost solid. One farmer recalled seeing the creature break through thinner ice near his field one winter afternoon. He said it was about 30 feet long and moved with slow, undulating motions like a giant eel. The Icelandic government even assembled a commission to analyze one of the videos. After reviewing the footage, the commission declared the sighting, quote, credible, and said the object appeared to be a living creature. While some believe it may be a massive eel or even a rope caught in water currents, winter sightings continue to be reported. Locals insist the creature is real and becomes most active during intense cold when the lake freezes over. A group of miners swore they saw a towering creature step out of a snowstorm and walk along a ridge before disappearing. In 2008, several miners working near Keno City in the Yukon Territory took shelter inside their trailer when a sudden whiteout hit. Visibility dropped to nothing, but as the storm started to calm, one of the miners looked out a small window and saw a massive figure walking along a ridge above their camp. He called the others over and they all watched as the figure took long, slow steps through deep snow. They estimated it was at least 8 feet tall. The miners said it seemed to be covered in dark hair, but moved too smoothly and too quietly to be a bear. One miner grabbed a camera, but the lens immediately fogged from the temperature difference, and he only captured a blurry outline. The next morning, they climbed the ridge and found huge footprints spaced much farther apart than any human stride. Photographs of the prints circulated online, but no official explanation was offered. Local First Nation communities noted the description closely matched long-standing sightings of a winter creature known as the Nukla. A fisherman pulled something from a frozen lake that he insisted was not a fish and not from any species he knew. On a remote lake in Russia in 2017, an experienced ice fisherman felt something powerful tug at his line. He assumed he had hooked a large pike, but when he reeled the catch toward the hole, something pale surfaced. He described the creature as long and thin with a flattened head and small dark eyes. It writhed in a way he said was nothing like a fish. When he tried to pull it out of the hole, the creature let out a high-pitched sound and thrashed violently until the line snapped. It slipped back under the ice and vanished. He was so disturbed that he left the lake immediately. He later brought several other fishermen to the spot who all agreed they had never heard of anything like it living in that lake. The story spread through local newspapers and remains one of the strangest winter fishing encounters ever documented in the region. 2 drivers witnessed a pale animal standing upright in the middle of a snow-covered highway. In December 1997, a man driving near Elie, Minnesota, encountered something so strange that he pulled over and refused to continue his trip for over an hour. As he came around a bend, he saw what he thought was a person standing in the middle of the road. As he slowed down, he noticed the figure was much too thin to be human and unnaturally tall. The skin was almost white and the arms hung down lower than a human's would. When his headlights fully illuminated the figure, it slowly turned its head toward him. He panicked and reversed away as fast as he could. Moments later, another vehicle came from the opposite direction and reported seeing something tall run into the woods. Both drivers independently described the same creature. Park rangers searched the area but found only long, narrow footprints in the snow that disappeared near a cluster of trees. To this day, the sightings remain unsolved. A research team spotted something climbing out of a crack in the ice before disappearing into a blizzard. During a 1994 scientific expedition to East Antarctica, a small team was traveling along a ridge when they saw motion at the mouth of a crevasse. At first, they thought it was another researcher climbing up, but the shape moved strangely. It was low to the ground and crawling in a jerky motion. One scientist used binoculars and immediately told the others to keep their distance. He said the figure was hairless and extremely thin, with limbs longer than normal for a human. The creature crawled along the edge of the crevasse, then suddenly stood up. The team estimated that it was over 7 feet tall. Before they could take a photograph, the wind picked up and a wall of blowing snow obscured the view. When the blizzard passed, the creature was gone. A family captured video of a creature watching them from the trees during a winter holiday. In 2010, a family staying in a remote cabin in northern Sweden filmed a strange creature lurking near the tree line. The father had gone outside to record the heavy snowfall when he noticed a tall shape standing still behind the trees. At first, he assumed it was a person hiking nearby, but the shape was too still and too thin. When he zoomed in, the figure stepped back behind a tree as if hiding. The father called his family outside and they all saw the shape moving slowly through the woods. When they tried to approach, the figure slipped deeper into the forest and then vanished. Swedish authorities reviewed the video but offered no clear explanation. A driver swears a creature crawled across the road during a whiteout and stood up taller than any person before fleeing. In January 2019, a man driving alone near the small town of Delta Junction, Alaska, got caught in a sudden blizzard. He slowed to a crawl as visibility dropped. While inching forward, he saw something low to the ground moving across the snowy road. He assumed it was a wolf, but as it came closer, he realized the shape was wrong. It did crawl on all fours, but the limbs were incredibly long. When it reached the other side of the road, the creature rose to 2 legs and towered over the snowbank. The man said it had no fur and looked almost skeletal. It did not look at him, but loped away in a strange, lurching gait until it disappeared into whiteout conditions. The man reported the encounter to state troopers who checked the road the next morning. They found long tracks spaced far apart and not shaped like any known animal prints. The man later said the thing he saw looked like something designed to move through deep snow, but not meant to be seen.
The Michigan Dogman is a creature that's been part of local legend since 1887, when it was first reported in Wexford County, Michigan, described as this 7-foot creature standing on its hind legs, but with the torso of a man and the head of a dog. It's also said to have glowing blue or amber eyes and lets out this terrifying howl that sounds like an eerily distorted human scream. While it wasn't widely known until later, the Dogman is said to have been haunting areas around the Manistee River long before the first reports came out. The first big encounter, though, was in 1887, when two lumberjacks claimed to have spotted a creature with the body of a man and the head of a dog. And over the years, there have been other sightings, including one in 1937 in Paris, Michigan, where a man was attacked by wild dogs, one of which was walking on two legs. There were more reports in the 50s and 60s, and in the early 90s, a man simply known as Ben to the press reported seeing the Dogman multiple times in Ottawa County. One time he saw it standing behind a car in his parents' driveway. Another witness, in 1994, hit a very large animal with his car, thinking it was a bear, but found gray fur left behind in the grill. The Honey Island Swamp Monster, also called the Cajun Sasquatch, is a creature said to live in the Honey Island Swamp in Louisiana. Descriptions of it are pretty similar to Bigfoot, a large, hairy, bipedal creature, about, again, 7 feet tall. I don't know what it is with all these 7 feet tall monsters. This one, though, with gray hair and glowing yellow or red eyes, and a horrible smell. People who've claimed to see it say it looks like an ape-human hybrid, and the creature is even sometimes called the Louisiana Wookiee, or just the Thing. Some people have reported finding unusual footprints, with only 4 toes instead of the usual 5, which is pretty strange for a primate. The first reported sighting happened in 1963. Harlan Ford, a retired air traffic controller turned wildlife photographer, had taken footage of this strange creature with a Super 8 camera. The footage was only found after his death, in 1980 though, when a reel of film showing the creature was found among his belongings. But even back in 1974, Ford and his friend Billy Mills said they had found strange footprints and the body of a wild boar with its throat slashed in the swamp. Today, people still believe the creature roams the swamp. Some people believe the creature, or creatures, maybe escaped circus chimpanzees from a train crash that happened in the early 20th century, and then the story goes they might have just ran out into the woods and eventually adapted to their new environment. Now, we've covered a lot of big, hairy monsters, so let's change things up for a moment with something very different. I don't know what to make of this one. Is it a ghost, a demonic spirit? Not sure, but the story comes from Reddit user Mr. Witch, who writes, "I was hiking through the remnants of a remote, long-abandoned town in the surrounding area. To get as far into the woods as I was, you had to cross fallen trees over a creek 3 times. I had just crossed the 3rd bridge and was about 5 miles in when something blue caught my eye just ahead of me. There was a man, in his 60s at least, wearing blue satin pajamas, sitting in a tree. The closer I got to him, the louder he laughed. It wasn't a maniacal laugh, but it set off all the alarms in my head nevertheless. He also wasn't wearing any shoes, but looked well-groomed and clean. I gave him a friendly nod as I passed, and he just kept laughing. Then it stopped. I turned, and he was gone. There was no branch cracking, plants rustling, nothing. He was just gone. Still rubs me the wrong way. The area I was in was pretty rough, like very secluded. Not very many people venture as deep as I was that day. No idea what was going on there." In May of 1882, 2 boys, Ed and Joe, were fishing in a creek near Crosswick, Ohio, when they encountered something that would go down in history as one of Ohio's strangest stories, and that is saying a lot for Ohio. Ed and Joe heard rustling in the brush and started to see what they'd later describe as a massive-sized snake. The creature then charged at them, and when it got close to Ed, it suddenly grew arms and legs. 2 arms shot out, and 2 legs appeared from some hidden spot on its body. It grabbed Ed and started dragging him toward a hollow tree. The 2 friends, of course, screamed in terror, and 3 men working in a nearby quarry ran to help. By the time they got there, the creature was trying to crawl into the tree with Ed still in its grip. The men shouted, scaring the creature off, and Ed was rescued. Though he was physically okay and expected to recover soon, he did have strange convulsions and bouts of terror afterward. Now, that very same day, a group of 60 men armed with pitchforks and axes gathered around said tree. When they started chopping, the creature leaped out and ran upright like a person off into the forest. It was described as this 30 to 40 feet long creature, 12 to 14 feet tall, and it sped away and vanished. No one ever saw the creature again, but it became known as the Crosswig Monster. In 1952, the small town of Flatwoods, West Virginia became the site of one of the strangest cryptid encounters in history. It all started when a group of youngsters and their teacher were playing baseball when they saw a mysterious light in the sky, which crashed into the nearby woods. Curious, they went to investigate, and they saw something they couldn't make sense of. A 10-foot tall creature with a glowing red face, a spade-shaped head, and a body wrapped in this metallic-looking fabric. It was also hovering in place. It began slowly moving toward the group, who quickly dashed back out of the forest and into town to report the incident. There were multiple investigations, but no concrete evidence was found to explain the encounter. In 1973, deep in the forests of Tennessee, a group of hunters reported an unusual encounter with a creature they could only describe as a wild man. The group was out hunting when they came across a large, hairy figure standing between the trees, staring at them with glowing eyes. The creature was roughly 7 feet tall, with thick, matted fur covering its body. The hunters described it as having a pungent, musky odor similar to a wet dog. Yum. One of the hunters fired a shot at the creature, but it disappeared into the woods before anyone could get a good look at it. The group found no tracks or evidence of the creature afterward either. This sighting would become part of a larger collection of, quote, wild man sightings in the Appalachian region. And ever since, there have been theories that there could be some reclusive, undiscovered species living deep out in the woods. This last story just chilled me to the bone. I'll call it the Watcher in the Woods. It comes from Reddit user Jamie11134 and goes as follows. I live right next to the woods. I can see them out my window. Well, one night I was sitting on my bed watching TV when a light flashed through my window. I looked around and there was nothing there, so I brushed it off as me being crazy. About 5 minutes later, it happened again, so I looked around again, but there was still nothing. The third time it happened, I was getting ticked off, and I assumed it was one of my stupid neighbor's kids who always mess around. I opened my window to tell them to piss off, but as I looked closer, the only thing I saw was a black purse, one that I had lost about a week before when I went clubbing. Something in my head was screaming to get away from the window, so I shut it and closed the curtains, locked my bedroom door before calling my dad. He came over immediately and grabbed the bag from outside, then locked all the windows and doors before checking the whole house. We looked through the purse and nothing had been taken, but there was also a small note crumpled in it that said something along the lines of, "Watch your back." My dad called the cops, who also did a full sweep of the house and took the purse back with them. The next morning, they found a flashlight and a backpack, which had a small collection of pictures of me that had been taken over what looked to be the course of a year. In 2003, researchers in Shanghai created the first successful human-animal hybrid, often referred to as Rabbit Man. This involved fusing human cells with rabbit eggs, resulting in embryos that were part human and part rabbit. Yikes. Now, this wasn't the first attempt at a hybrid like this. Scientists in the US had been trying to create animal-human combinations for years, but hadn't really gotten anywhere with it. The Shanghai team, though, managed to develop embryos with a strikingly high percentage of human DNA, making these hybrids more human than rabbit. The goal was to explore stem cell research and the potential for organ transplants, but after just a few days of development, the embryos were destroyed and their stem cells were harvested. This led to some debate about the morality of creating life only to end it for scientific purposes. Plus, mixing human DNA with animals just feels creepy to a lot of folks. Not quite as blatantly messed up as the two-headed dog thing, but the concept of a rabbit man kind of sends shivers down my spine. I don't think it's something I'd ever actually want to see in real life, you know? In 2007, researchers at Yale conducted an experiment that involved injecting human neural stem cells into 5 monkeys suffering from Parkinson's disease. They wanted to see if these human cells could help alleviate the symptoms of their condition, and amazingly, the results were actually pretty promising. After the treatment, the monkeys had improvements. They were able to walk, eat, and move a lot better, and their tremors decreased without any adverse side effects like tumors or toxicity. The human neural cells didn't just coexist with the monkey's brain cells. They actually survived and migrated within the monkey's brains, changing how their brains functioned. So the question was, how many human cells could be integrated into a monkey's brain before it just fundamentally altered the creature? If these monkeys began to exhibit behavior that seemed more human, what exactly would we have on our hands? It's a lot to think about. Now let's dive into the world of wholphins, which are hybrids born from a female bottlenose dolphin and a male false killer whale. The first wholphin was found in 1981 at Tokyo SeaWorld. Sadly, it only lived for about 200 days. These hybrids are pretty much only found in marine parks and aquariums though, places that have a pretty terrible reputation for how they treat their animals, and aside from the ethical concerns of marine parks themselves, wholphins face a whole host of health issues. Like most hybrids, they tend to have higher mortality rates and deal with psychological and behavioral problems. Mixing genetic material from two different species can create a lot of complications. These creatures just aren't designed to thrive like their parent species are, and their quality of life often takes a hit because of it. And the wild wholphins can't really exist naturally. The geographical behavioral differences between false killer whales and bottlenose dolphins make it nearly impossible for them to mate outside of captivity. So when humans breed things like this, it's a serious disruption of the natural order. So this messed up thing was dubbed the River Kovashi alien. In 1996, whatever this thing was washed up on the banks of the River Kovashi in Russia, and nobody had any idea what they were looking at. With the Leningrad nuclear power plant nearby though, some speculated that the creature might have been mutated by radioactive waste leaking into the river. Now, at first many thought it could be a mutant chicken embryo, but it didn't have any wings. Experts from the Institute of Biophysics examined it, but they also couldn't determine what it actually was. In March of 1956, something pretty messed up happened in the New Mexico desert near Holloman Air Force Base. Air Force Sergeant Jonathan Lovett and Major William Cunningham were out looking for debris from a rocket test when they came across a scene that would haunt them forever. Cunningham apparently heard a scream and rushed to find Lovett. Instead of an expected snake bite, he saw Lovett being pulled into a hovering silver disc by what looked like a long serpentine arm. The disc hovered about 15 to 20 feet off the ground, and before Cunningham could process what the hell he was seeing, it just shot up into the sky, with Lovett still inside. Terrified, Cunningham ran back to his Jeep to call for help. Security teams arrived, and while they took Cunningham to the base hospital, search parties were set out to find Lovett. 3 days later, they discovered his body. About 10 miles from the site, it was nude and severely mutilated. The autopsy couldn't provide any clear answers about what had happened. Years later, two men, William Cooper and former Green Beret Captain William English, claimed that they'd seen official reports on the incident, even though the government has consistently denied any record of it. In July of 2024, paleontologists working in Mongolia's Gobi Desert announced the discovery of a brand new dinosaur called Duonicus sogbatari. This thing had massive claws, over 12 inches long, and somehow those claws still had their original keratin casing intact. That almost never happens. Usually you just get the fossilized bone, but this one had the actual outer sheath, which helped confirm just how sharp and curved they were. And even though it lived about 70 million years ago, parts of it were so well preserved that scientists could learn more about its muscles, joints, and how it moved. This was one of the most complete therizinosaur skeletons ever found in Asia. That's the family this one belongs to. The dinosaur was officially described in 2025. The team was led by Yoshisugu Kobayashi from Hokkaido University and a few paleontologists. According to them, this is one of the most complete and detailed dinosaurs of this type ever found in Asia. In June of 2024, scientists working with the indigenous Anangu people found a brand new lizard species hiding out in the desert of South Australia. It's called Leopholus apuja, and it belongs to a group of lizards known as rock skinks. But this one stood out right away because of its weird scale pattern and its DNA. The discovery was led by Jules Borkar from Monash University, and the team made it official after checking its genetics and comparing it with other species. Thing is, the indigenous people already knew about this lizard. They call it a puja, and they've known where it hangs out and what it does for generations. Without their help, the researchers probably wouldn't have even found it. This place is super remote and mostly uncharted, so the lizard had completely slipped under the radar until now. To the science community, that is. What really surprised researchers was how isolated the species is. Its genes show that it split off from other skinks a long time ago and just adapted to its own rocky little part of the desert. There's a shrimp that lives in one of the hottest places on Earth, and it only shows up when it rains. Yeah, I bet you weren't expecting to see a shrimp on this list. It's called Phallocryptus fahimi, and scientists officially named it in 2017 after finding it in the Lut Desert in Iran. This desert can hit temperatures of over 150 degrees Fahrenheit on the ground, so you'd think nothing would survive there, but these shrimp don't live out in the open. They exist as eggs buried deep in the dry salt flats, and they can stay dormant for years, maybe even decades. When it rains, the eggs hatch almost instantly. Within a few days, you've got tiny shrimp swimming around in puddles that didn't even exist a week ago. They grow up really fast, they lay more eggs, and then the puddles dry out and they vanish again. Dr. Hussein Rajay, who helped identify the species, said it was like discovering a, quote, ghost species, because people had seen them pop up before, but no one had figured out exactly what they were. They're part of a group called fairy shrimp, which live in temporary desert pools all over the world. But this one's extra weird because you're just not expecting a shrimp to live in the hottest desert on Earth, and it's just nuts how long they can stay in egg form. So back in 2014, a couple researchers were analyzing soil samples from the Rann of Kutch in western India. If you've never heard of it, it's this massive flat desert made up of salt flats that get insanely hot and dry. You wouldn't think much of anything could survive there, but when they ran the soil through DNA tests, something weird popped up: traces of giant viruses. Regular viruses are tiny and pretty simple, but these ones, like Mimi virus and Pandora virus, are so big and complex that scientists argue over whether they should even count as viruses. They've got way more genes than usual ones that can do things regular viruses can't. What threw everyone off is that these kinds of viruses had only been found in water before. Ponds, oceans, stuff like that. So finding their DNA in dry desert soil where nothing's even supposed to be alive, it just doesn't seem to make any sense. But the team didn't confirm if the viruses are actually still active or if it's just leftover DNA hanging around. Australia has this tiny blind marsupial called the southern marsupial mole that lives almost entirely underground in the desert. Doesn't have eyes or visible ears, and its fur is super smooth, which helps it glide through loose sand like a fish swimming in water. Scientists say it sort of swims through the sand by wriggling its body and digging with its front claws. These moles are incredibly rare to see. Most of what we know about them comes from ones that accidentally get dug up or turn up in predators' stomachs. They're a mystery in a lot of ways. Nobody's totally sure what they eat, but they probably feed on bugs, larvae, and other tiny critters living underground. Because these creatures spend almost all their lives underground, studying them is really tough. Lately, scientists have been using motion-triggered cameras and checking for traces of their DNA in the environment to figure out more, but they're still one of Australia's most mysterious mammals. The thorny devil is this little lizard that lives in the Australian outback and is completely covered in spikes from its head to its tail. The spikes make it look dangerous, but it's mostly harmless. It moves slowly, eats ants, doesn't put up much of a fight, but good luck biting into one, let alone swallowing it. Not that you want to do that anyway, just saying it is one of its defense mechanisms. One of the coolest things about it is how it drinks. It doesn't lick up water or sip from puddles. Instead, it collects moisture through tiny grooves in its skin. When there's dew or rain, the water travels across its body and straight into its mouth. It's like it has a built-in straw system. The thorny devil eats mostly ants and has a sticky tongue that helps slurp them up, and it'll eat thousands of them in a day. It also has this weird little fake head on the back of its neck. So when it feels threatened, It tucks its real head down and shows off the decoy to confuse predators. Not much else in the desert messes with it after that. Well, I may have just found my new favorite ant, because I'm a sucker for chrome. I mean, look at these things. They're like ants wearing knight's armor. It's called the silver ant, and it lives in the Sahara, one of the hottest places on Earth. The sand gets so hot, it can cook most insects alive, but the silver ant is built to deal with it. It only comes out during the hottest part of the day, which sounds insane, but it actually gives the ant an advantage here. Most predators are hiding from the heat, so it has the desert pretty much to itself. Its silver coating helps balance the sun's heat off its body, and its long legs keep it raised above the ground so it's not touching the hot sand. And when they come out, they scavenge. If a bug or lizard has died from the heat, silver ants race out, they grab what they can, and they rush back underground before they overheat. They're insanely fast too, running about 2 feet per second. That is pretty insane to picture, like 2 feet. What do we got there? 1 second? That's pretty crazy. This one sounds kind of made up, but the screaming hairy armadillo is 100% real. It lives in the dry grasslands and deserts of South America, mostly Argentina and Bolivia. And yes, these things actually scream. When it gets panicked, feels threatened, it lets out this loud, high-pitched screech. It kind of sounds weirdly human. Take a listen to this. So that weird scream plus its tough armor is usually enough to get it out of trouble. These armadillos are covered in soft hair underneath all that hard plating, which is where the hairy part of their name comes from. The fur helps keep it warm at night, since desert temperatures drop super fast. During the day, it burrows underground to stay cool, digging pretty fast with its front claws. It's mostly a nighttime animal, coming out to hunt bugs, worms, and plants after dark. They've been seen eating small lizards and rodents. Even with the armor, they're surprisingly quick when they want to be. Camel spiders are desert arachnids, mostly found in places like the Middle East, North Africa, and parts of the American Southwest. They're not actual spiders or scorpions. They belong to their own group called solifuges. They have huge jaws that can be nearly as long as their body. They use them to grab, crush, and chew insects, small lizards, and even scorpions. Unlike some arachnids, camel spiders don't have venom, but their bite still hurts because of how strong their jaws are. They're famous for being fast runners. Some can sprint at up to 10 miles per hour. Most camel spiders hunt at night and hide during the day under rocks or in burrows to avoid the desert heat. These spiders are also shy. They usually avoid humans, so scientists find them tough to study. They're quick, they're nocturnal, they don't stick around in one place, but they play an important role in the desert. Like a lot of other spiders, they help control insect populations. So, as creepy as they look, camel spiders help keep things balanced. The sandfish lizard lives in the deserts of North Africa and the Middle East. It's about 6 to 8 inches long, with smooth, shiny scales that let it slip easily through loose sand. When the sun gets too hot, or if it senses danger, it dives straight into the sand and sort of swims under the surface by moving its body in a wave-like motion, almost like a fish in water. To keep sand out, it closes its eyes and its nostrils. While underground, it hunts insects, spiders, scorpions. It can stay buried for several minutes before coming back out again. Scientists have been fascinated by the sandfish's swimming technique because it's one of the best examples of an animal perfectly adapted to life in the desert. Actually, the way it moves inspired engineers to try creating robots that can move through sand or rubble in the same kind of way. Fouke Monster, aka the Boggy Creek Monster, is probably most famous for the cult 1972 docu-horror movie The Legend of Boggy Creek. But stories about this creature stalking the forests around Fouke, Arkansas actually go back to 1851. But in 1971, this creature that had only been whispered about by locals suddenly made headlines when a disturbing report came from a couple named Bobby and Elizabeth Ford. Elizabeth had been sleeping on the couch and thought a bear was reaching through her window. Well, it turns out it was not a bear, but a large ape-like creature. Her husband and brother-in-law chased it off, firing shots at it, but they couldn't take it down. Later, they found 3-toed footprints near the house and scratches on the porch. A few weeks later, 3 people reported seeing the same creature cross a highway, and other locals and visitors started reporting strange sightings too. Over the years, more tracks were found and people kept spotting the creature. In 1991, someone claimed to see it jump from a bridge. By 1997, 1997, there were 40 reported sightings, and in 1998, it was supposedly seen near a creek bed. The folk monster is still a big part of local legend, with sightings continuing from time to time. Stories about a lizard man stalking Lee County, South Carolina date back to 1988. It all kicked off when local sheriffs were called to check out a vehicle that had been damaged outside a house near a swamp. The car had huge tooth marks and scratches all over it. Once the story hit the news, a teenager named Christopher Davis came forward with his own experience. He said that 2 weeks prior, his car had also been messed up, but this time he had actually seen what did it. He described the creature as this massive 7-foot-tall lizard-like thing with 3 fingers on each hand, red eyes, and green, wet, scaly skin. Christopher was driving home from work one night when he got a flat tire. As he was fixing it, he saw the creature coming toward him. Freaked out, he jumped into his car and tried to drive off, but the lizard man was fast and it actually chased him down, running at 40 miles per hour, and even jumped onto the roof of his car, scratching at it. Christopher slammed on the brakes, sending the creature flying off, and then he sped away. Once Christopher's story hit the papers, the whole town just went crazy. People were reporting more sightings, and the local radio station even offered a $1 million reward to anyone who could catch the lizard man. But by the end of that summer, reports started to fade out, and local sheriffs started saying it was probably just a bear, because, of course, bears and scaly, red-eyed lizard monsters look exactly the same, right? The Enfield monster case started in April of 1973, when a strange creature was reported in Enfield, Illinois. The first sighting happened one night when a man named Henry McDaniel heard scratching at his door. Thinking it was a bear, he grabbed a firearm and flashlight and cautiously made his way to the front door. But when he opened it, he saw something. It just wasn't a bear. He described the creature as being about 4.5 feet tall, with 3 legs, short arms, and big pink glowing eyes. It was grayish and hairless. McDaniel fired at the thing, hitting it, and the creature made a sound like a wildcat before hopping away, covering 50 feet in just 3 jumps. When McDaniel called the police, they found strange footprints near the house, which were dog-like but apparently had 6 toes. McDaniel's screen door had also these large scratches taken out of it. A couple weeks later, McDaniel reported seeing the creature again near railroad tracks. A search party later reported coming across an ape-like creature near an abandoned building. More strange sightings started pouring in, and some started to wonder if the creature was some escaped animal from the zoo, like a kangaroo or an ape. McDaniel, who'd once had a kangaroo as a pet, oddly enough, was sure that this thing hadn't been a kangaroo though. Till this day, no one has ever figured out what was lurking in the woods around Enfield, Illinois. In May 1971, a family in Fouke, Arkansas had a terrifying night. They lived near the swamp. They started hearing weird noises outside their house after the sun went down. A man named Bobby Ford went out on the porch to see what was going on, and the porch light hit something huge. He said it was a giant, hairy creature, maybe 7 feet tall, with glowing red eyes. Before he could even move, the thing jumped at him and scratched his shoulder through his shirt. He scrambled back inside, and the family called the cops. When the police got there, they found actual proof that something had been there. There were huge footprints all around the house, some of them 14 inches long. The porch was banged up, and you could see where something heavy had pushed through the bushes. After that, everyone in town started seeing it. They all said the same thing. It was big, smelled terrible, like rotting garbage, and you could hear its heavy footsteps at night. People compared it to Bigfoot, but nobody could ever prove what it was, even though they found plenty of tracks in the mud. This story from 1955 is one of the strangest, most infamous alien encounter reports ever made. The Sutton family lived in a farmhouse in Kentucky, and one night they came screaming into the police station saying they'd been attacked. They said a glowing object landed in the woods, and then these little men started coming out of the trees. They were small, maybe 3 feet tall, with huge ears and glowing eyes. Their skin looked like shiny metal. The family was terrified. They stayed inside and watched as these things terrorized them, peeking through the windows, climbing onto their roof. The men in the family grabbed their rifles and started firing at them through the windows and doors. They said that whenever they were hit, hit, it would just flip backwards and run back into the woods, totally unaffected. When the police went to the farm, they found bullet holes everywhere and shells all over the floor, but no bodies of any animals. From 1764 to 1767, in a part of France called Gévaudan, something truly scary was happening. For those 3 years, a wolf-like monster was hunting people. And I say wolf-like because it wasn't a regular wolf. It was way bigger, with reddish fur and a giant chest, and even creepier, it didn't seem interested in livestock. It only wanted to attack people. It killed over 100 people during that time, and some put the number as high as 300. The whole country was terrified. It got so bad that the King of France actually sent his best hunters and soldiers to find it. And they killed a few big wolves, but seemingly not the right one. The attacks kept happening. Finally, a hunter named Jean Chastel fired at a massive animal with a silver bullet, and the attacks finally stopped. Now, what I love about this story is that unlike most cryptid legends, this one had a real body count. You can say it was just a really mean, oversized wolf, but it's also possible it was something else. In 1996 in Varginha, Brazil, these 3 women were walking through a vacant lot when they saw something crouched down by a wall. Some sort of creature, and it looked like it was in pain. They said it was about 4 or 5 feet tall, with brown skin that looked oily or greasy. It also had 3 weird bumps on its head that looked like little horns, and its eyes were big and red. They said it smelled strongly of ammonia, like really harsh cleaning supplies. Not long after they saw it, the whole town went into a frenzy. People claimed the military was everywhere, blocking off roads and taking objects away in trucks. There was even a story that a police officer touched the creature and died a few days later from a weird infection. The government eventually said the girls just saw a local man who was sick and had some physical disabilities, but the girls have stuck to their story for decades, saying that what they saw was definitely not a person. Flathead Lake in Montana is huge and deep, and for a long time people have been saying there's something living in it. Stories go way back, but one of the first big ones was in 1954. A guy named Harold was out in the water and saw what looked like a giant eel swimming along. He guessed it was at least 20 to 40 feet long. Since then, tons of people have been seeing the same thing. They usually see a dark snake-like shape moving under the water, or sometimes a row of humps. What's interesting is that people have seen these humps moving against the wind and the current, which means it's not just a log or a wave, it's something alive. People have even seen big wakes in the water where there are no boats around. Scientists have gone out with sonar to try and find it, but the lake is so big and deep that it would be easy for something to hide. Even though nobody's caught it on camera perfectly, the people who live around the lake are pretty sure they're not alone out there on the water.
Coming in at our halfway mark, we have shark versus shark. Battling a monster fish for over 4 hours sounds like a dream come true to most anglers, until you discover something else is gnawing on your hard-earned catch. Off the coast of Australia, 2 fishermen were reeling in what felt like a massive swordfish, only to learn it was actually a thresher shark being eaten alive by an even larger predator. By the time they hauled in the half-devoured shark onto the boat, there was hardly any torso left. While they suspected other sharks or possibly a giant squid, the real culprit remains a mystery. It is definitely a brutal reminder that in the ocean, there is always something bigger lurking in the depths, ready to snatch your trophy right off the hook. Next, we are talking about the battle. A Texas fisherman got a nasty surprise when the fish on his line came with a bonus: a snake wrapped around it in a death grip. As if hooking your dinner weren't enough, seeing a hungry serpent ready to chow down raises the question, who's actually in control here? The fisherman decided to play referee, using a knife to separate snake from fish. He then released them both, but not before earning bragging rights for the catch of the day. Talk about tension on the water. Reeling in a snake and a fish at the same time is kind of a once-in-a-lifetime event most anglers hope they'll never repeat. In our number 3 spot today, we have a literal grenade. Nobody expects a day out at the river to end with a bomb squad call, but that's exactly what happened when a fisherman in Gary, Indiana, hooked something suspicious from the murky depths of the Little Calumet River. Instead of a prize catch, he reeled in what looked like an explosive device. Local authorities weren't taking any chances. They shut down the nearest bridge and called in experts to investigate. While details remain scarce, the fisherman's day veered from calm casting to nerve-rattling drama in seconds. If you thought pulling up old boots were the worst that could happen, well, think again. Next, we are talking about this ancient discovery. A quick cast into an Irish lake turned into a step back in time when a fisherman brought up a pair of massive antlers. These ancient horns sparked plenty of local speculation. Monstrous lake creature? Some supernatural beast from Gaelic folklore? Turns out the fear factor was all in our imaginations. Experts identified the remains as belonging to a 10,000-year-old giant elk. Though not exactly a water-dwelling terror, stumbling upon relics of an extinct megafauna can still jolt the nerves, especially before science steps in with logical answers. In another era, this find might have fueled campfire stories for generations. And finally, ending off our list today, we have a giant seahorse. In the tropical waters off Australia's coast, two fishermen were left stunned when they brought up a fish that looked like a cross between a seahorse and a serpent. One look at its horse-like head and slender body, capable of growing up to 8 meters long, was enough to start a frenzy on social media, with people calling it a giant seahorse or, quote, something out of a fantasy film. Turns out it was an oarfish. Oarfish rarely surface alive since they dwell in deep waters below 250 meters, so most encounters involve a dead specimen washed ashore. That rarity has spawned countless myths, including the eerie belief that they herald disasters, earning them the nickname doomsday fish. Scientists think these shimmering giants might even be the real-life inspiration for sea serpent legends. If you're out on a boat and an oarfish suddenly appears, you can bet everyone will be reaching for their phones, and maybe also saying a quick prayer or two, just in case.
First glance, it looked like something from a nightmare. In 1958, an amateur fossil collector named Francis Tully was searching for fossils when he came across something so strange that even experienced paleontologists were baffled. The fossil had a soft, torpedo-shaped body. It had a long, flexible proboscis extending from its head, ending in a claw-like pincer. And on top of its head, it had two stalked eyes that stuck out sideways like a hammerhead shark. This creature became known as Tullymonstrum gregarium, or the Tully monster. The problem was simple. No one could agree on what it was. For decades, scientists debated whether it was a worm, a mollusk, a chordate, or something entirely unknown. It did not match any known group of animals. It had features that seemed to belong to completely different evolutionary branches. Some researchers argued it was related to the lamprey. Others thought it might be an invertebrate. At one point, it was even suggested that it belonged to a totally extinct branch of life with no modern relatives. The fossil record did not help much either. Tully monsters were found only in one specific geological layer from about 300 million years ago. They did not appear before that period, and they vanished completely afterward. Even modern imaging techniques caused more confusion. In 2016, a study suggested the creature might have had a notochord, which would place it among vertebrates. But later studies changed that interpretation, arguing that structures were misidentified. As of today, there is still no universal agreement on where the Tully monster belongs. It is the official state fossil of Illinois, and it remains one of the most stubborn classification problems in paleontology. When European scientists first saw it, they thought it was a joke. In 1798, a preserved specimen of a platypus was sent from Australia to England. It had the bill of a duck, the fur of an otter, the tail of a beaver, and webbed feet. Naturalists genuinely believed someone had stitched together different animals. They checked for seams, they tried to peel the bill off the body, assuming it was glued on. The platypus completely broke the biological rules of the time. It was a mammal, but it laid eggs. It had fur, but also a venomous spur on its hind legs. It produced milk, but had no nipples. There was no category for it. For years, scientists debated whether it should even be considered a mammal at all. It did not fit the definition as they understood it in the 18th and early 19th centuries. Eventually, researchers realized the platypus belonged to a very ancient group of mammals called monotremes. These animals split off early in mammalian evolution and retained reptile-like traits such as laying eggs. But at the time of its discovery, that category did not exist. The platypus forced scientists to rethink how mammals evolved. Even today, it remains one of the most biologically strange animals alive. Its genome is a mosaic of reptile, bird, and mammal genes. It is not an evolutionary mistake. It is a survivor from a very old chapter of life on Earth. When it was first reconstructed, it was upside down. Hallucigenia was discovered in the Burgess Shale fossil deposits in Canada, which date back over 500 million years. These fossils preserve soft-bodied creatures from the Cambrian explosion, a period when animal life rapidly diversified. Hallucigenia looked like a thin worm with long spikes sticking out of its back and soft tentacles underneath, or at least that is what scientists thought. Early reconstructions placed the spikes on the bottom and the tentacles on top. This made the animal look like it walked on sharp stilts while waving soft appendages in the air. It was so strange that the creature was named Hallucigenia because it looked like something seen in a hallucination. Later discoveries revealed the entire reconstruction was wrong. The spikes were actually defensive structures on its back, which, to be fair, makes a lot more sense. The soft tentacles were its legs. Even the head was misidentified. Eventually it was linked to modern velvet worms, but it represented an early and very different body plan. It was part of an extinct experimentation phase in evolution where nature was trying out designs that would not last. Hallucigenia showed scientists that early animal life was far more diverse and bizarre than previously imagined. It forced a rewrite of how complex animals evolved. In 2004, scientists working in the Canadian Arctic uncovered a fossil that filled a massive evolutionary gap. The creature was named Tiktaalik, and it lived about 375 million years ago. This creature had scales, fins, and gills like a fish, but it also had a flat head, lungs, a rib cage, and wrist bones capable of supporting its weight. Most importantly, it had a movable neck. Fish do not have necks. This creature did not fit cleanly into fish or amphibian categories. It was something in between. Before, scientists knew that vertebrates moved from water to land, but the transition was poorly understood. This creature showed how that happened step by step. Its fins were structured like primitive arms. It could prop itself up in shallow water. It likely spent time both swimming and crawling. At the time of its discovery, it did not fit any existing classification. It forced scientists to accept that major animal groups did not appear suddenly. They emerged gradually through transitional forms.
In early 2024, a team of scientists working with the Waorani people in Ecuador came across what looked like a typical green anaconda until they ran the DNA. Turns out it wasn't the same species at all. It's now been named the northern green anaconda, and genetically it's about 5.5% different from the one we already knew about. That might not sound like much, but in evolutionary terms, that's a 10 million year separation. I was surprised by that too. This thing is huge. The team spotted one female that was over 20 feet long, and some locals claim they've seen them closer to 25 feet, weighing more than a half ton. It lives in remote rivers stretching from Ecuador to Venezuela and has pretty much gone unnoticed by science until now. They mostly feed on big prey, and by big prey I mean like deer and caimans, which are basically like a type of alligator. So yeah, these things are massive. The green anaconda stays underwater for long stretches. They're definitely not easy to spot, and unfortunately their territory overlaps with areas being torn up by oil drilling and illegal logging. The same researchers who found the snake also pointed out high levels of pollution in the water from petroleum waste, which could be slowly poisoning these animals. So yeah, the biggest snake ever found might already be at risk of extinction, and we only just learned it existed. Meanwhile, all you snake haters are clapping and cheering. I know you're out there. It's okay, I see you. This species was only officially described this year. It was found in the Brazilian Amazon jungle near the Juruá River. It's tiny, barely the size of your thumb, and unlike the last entry on this list, these creatures stand out because of their vibrant colors. Deep, coppery limbs, a reddish-brown body, and thin blue stripes running down their backs. Scientists named it Renitomea etherea, which roughly means heavenly in Latin. Researchers said that discovering it in such an untouched, remote area felt surreal, which completely makes sense. I mean, on one hand, it makes sense to find a new animal in a place where barely any human being has set foot, but I just mean it must have felt like they were stepping into another world. This new species belongs to the poison dart frog family, and like the others, it's toxic to the touch. That toxin comes from the things it eats, usually ants and mites. It's how these frogs protect themselves. This one in particular was only found in one small area, which makes it vulnerable right out of the gate. If anything changes in that spot, deforestation, drought, pollution, there is a good chance the whole species could disappear before we even get a chance to learn more about it. Also interesting, scientists noticed its call was different from nearby species, which could mean its mating habits or territorial behavior are totally unique too. So this thing looks like a giant worm, right? Want to know something really crazy though? It's not. It's actually an amphibian, a legless amphibian, a newly discovered species called the truncated caecilian. It was found in Ecuador in 2024. Technically, it sat in a museum for years before anyone realized what it was. After researchers dug back into the area it came from, they confirmed it was actually something totally new. This thing grows about 19 inches long, they have pale gray bodies, and their heads are kind of flattened out, hence the truncated part of the name. Let's talk about the teeth. What teeth, you may be asking? Allow me to explain, or shut off the video, I don't care. So these things actually have these curved back, needle-like teeth. It uses them to grab stuff and eat stuff like earthworms underground. These guys spend nearly their whole lives buried in the soil, which is why they're rarely seen and barely studied. There's still a ton we don't know about them. How do they reproduce? What's its full range? How many even exist? I don't know, if you're coming to me for answers, maybe rethink your life. While exploring Peru's Alto Mayo region in 2024, scientists found a weird little rodent that lives part of its life in water. Yes, that is right, folks. We have a mouse that swims. It goes against everything I have ever learned about mice growing up, and believe me, I learned a lot. It hasn't been officially named yet, but it's believed to belong to the genus Daptomus, a group of semi-aquatic rodents. These critters have partially webbed feet, a waterproof-looking coat, and a diet that probably includes aquatic insects. They only spotted it in one small, swampy patch of forest, so they are pretty rare. What's especially odd, though, is that the area it was found in isn't untouched jungle. People live and work nearby, so these weirdos, these freaks of nature, have been hiding out in plain sight all this time while we've been watching? I don't know. What are people watching now? Anyways, it says something about how little we actually notice the creatures around us. No one knows yet if this is a totally new species or just a rarely seen one, but either way it's a pretty wild find. It also shows how even well-trodden parts of the Amazon are still weird as hell. In 2024, scientists working in Bolivia's upper Madiri River confirmed that they'd found a new species of piranha. Thank God, we all wanted a new one. This new species is definitely sharp-toothed like the others, but there are a few things about it that set it apart. It's got a dark crescent-shaped spot on the base of its tail and a deep red anal fin edged in black. Don't ask me what an anal fin is, this is just what I read online from far more qualified people than myself. Sue me. They discovered this new species after catching a few in a lesser studied part of the river, and at a first glance it looked familiar, but the details didn't line up with any of the known species. Back in the lab, genetic tests confirmed that it hadn't been identified before. Researchers say it's part of a group known for aggressive feeding, but we still don't know much about this specific one, like how big they can get or how they can hunt. The point is, even a fish as infamous as the piranha can still surprise you with new branches on the family tree. Maybe don't go skinny dipping in the upper Madiri anytime soon. This one's for the spider people. All 12 of you around the world. In 2024, researchers in Ecuador found a brand new species of giant crab spider. It's part of the huntsman spider family, which are already known for being fast and too big. This one can stretch out around 5 inches with long orange legs tipped in brown, and I feel itchy just talking about it. What's interesting is how it hunts. Unlike web spiders, these guys don't sit and wait. They're stalkers. They move through the jungle a few feet off the ground, creeping silently, looking for prey. That kind of hunting style isn't typical for other spiders in its group, which is what tipped researchers off that this one might be something new. It's the first time a spider from this genus has been found in Ecuador, but others like it have shown up in parts of Central and South America. These guys were named after an Ecuadorian biologist who helped train the team that discovered it, which is a nice touch. My heart is warmed and grossed out because of the spiders. In 2023, scientists discovered a new species of parasitic wasp in the Peruvian Amazon. This wasp has a particularly large head. It's also parasitic, laying eggs inside other insects. Parasitic wasps like this sound disgusting, but they actually play a big role in controlling insect populations. They act as natural pest regulators, and the fact that they're around means there's a healthy ecosystem balance. This one's for anyone who thinks all snakes are huge and scary. In 2022, researchers in Ecuador's Amazon found a snake that barely hit 8 inches long. It is a new species of dwarf boa. It kind of looks like a baby version of a regular boa constrictor. Same coiled body, same rough pattern, but just mini. Don't let the size fool you, however. This thing is still a predator. It eats tiny frogs and lizards and probably anything else small and unlucky enough to cross its path. They found it in 2 places, which both make sense because they are both high biodiversity areas that don't get a lot of foot traffic. What is extra weird is that it's part of a group that is mostly found in the Caribbean, so what the hell is it doing in South America? That's still up for debate, but either way it shows just how little we actually know about what's crawling around out there. This tiny monkey was hiding in plain sight for years. Scientists only realized in 2021 that it is a completely separate species from the marmosets we already knew about. It is called Schneider's marmoset, and it actually lives in a small patch of rainforest in Brazil. You'd think a monkey with bright orange hands and feet, a silver chest and a black tail would stand out, but apparently not. Just blended in with its cousins until somebody finally took a closer look at the DNA and skull shape. Turns out this thing's been mislabeled the whole time. It's only about 9 inches tall, not counting the tail, and it's got that wide-eyed, I know something you don't monkey face. But here's the problem. It lives right in the middle of what they call the arc of deforestation. Basically, that's the edge of the Amazon where trees are getting wiped out left and right for cattle, soy, and other development. So yeah, we just figured out this little guy's been here all along, and now it's already in trouble. The more forest gets cleared, the smaller their home gets. So we've got a monkey we didn't know existed with a super limited range living in one of the most threatened parts of the rainforest. That's not a great combo, but hey, at least now we know it's there. Better late than never, I guess? This frog was found in early 2024, but to get to it, scientists had to hike through steep, foggy mountains near the Brazil-Venezuela border. That part of the Amazon is so remote, you pretty much have to parachute in. This frog has a name that sounds like something out of Lord of the Rings, but it fits. The place they found it is nicknamed the Misty Mountains. This creature is small, brown, and doesn't look like much at first, but it lives right near the entrance of tarantula burrows, which is either extremely gutsy or extremely stupid. Either way, it's new to science. It's one of several new frog species they found in that area, which is carved up by ancient geological formations called tepus, basically flat-topped mountains that have been isolated for years. So it's not just the frog that's rare, it's even the land itself. Scientists think frogs like this one evolved to survive specifically in that misty, high-altitude jungle because they don't live anywhere else, which also means that if anything changes, like climate, humidity, even slight damage to the terrain, that could be it for them. There's no plan B for these guys. They've literally got one mountain, one tiny patch of mossy ground, and that's their whole world.
Back in April of 1977, a teenager named Bill Bartlett was driving down a quiet road in Dover, Massachusetts. It was late, around 10:30 at night. As he was driving along, his headlights hit something standing on a low stone wall. At first he figured it was just a dog, maybe a big cat, but when he got closer, he realized this thing didn't look like any animal he'd ever seen. It was small, maybe 3 or 4 feet tall, but its body was all wrong. He said it had this giant head shaped like a watermelon, and its arms and legs were super thin and long. The creepiest part was the eyes, though. Bill said they looked like 2 glowing orange marbles staring back at him. It didn't have a nose, a mouth, or even ears, just those big eyes and a big head, and its skin was lizard-like, almost like wet sandpaper. Billy only saw it for a few seconds before he kept driving, but Bill wasn't the only one who saw it. A couple hours later, another kid named John Baxter was walking home about a mile away. He saw a small figure coming toward him in the dark. He thought it was a friend and called out, but the thing didn't say anything. When it got close, it suddenly bolted into the woods. Then the very next night, a girl named Abby Brabham saw the same thing while she was out driving. And here's what's really interesting. When investigators looked at a map, they noticed that all 3 sightings happened in a straight line across town. The sightings made sense, and none of these kids knew each other. It wasn't like this was a coordinated hoax, which made it even crazier when all 3 witnesses drew pictures for police of what they saw, and even though they hadn't talked to each other yet, the drawings looked almost exactly the same. In the late 1800s, specifically September of 1891, some guys were out early in the morning delivering ice in Crawfordsville, Indiana. They looked up and saw something that probably made them want to quit their jobs right then and there. It was this huge, white, blurry thing floating in the sky. They said it was about 18 feet long. But it wasn't solid like a plane or a bird. It more like a giant swimming jellyfish, but it was up in the air. It had these weird fins, like long bits, hanging off it as it moved and drifted. It was completely silent, too. Now, if you think these guys might have been on something, I mean, that's a perfectly understandable thought to have, but they weren't the only ones who saw it. A local preacher saw it, too. Now, some tried to say it was just a big flock of birds, maybe some trash blowing in the wind, but the people who saw it up close said absolutely not. To this day, nobody has a clue what the giant sky jellyfish thing actually was, but some wonder today if what they were actually seeing may have been a UFO. It started one night in April of 1973 in Enfield, Illinois. A boy named Greg Garrett was playing outside. He claimed something attacked him, shredding his shoes and jumping on his feet. He said the thing had 3 legs, and a few hours later, a man named Henry McDaniel heard a scratching sound at his front door. He opened it up, thinking maybe it was a stray dog, but instead he saw this monster. Henry said it had a short body, tiny little arms sticking out of its chest, and it had 3 legs. He said the eyes were pink and as big as flashlights. Henry grabbed his firearm and shot at it. The thing just took off, not running, but hopping. He said it was jumping 20 or 25 feet in a single leap. When the police showed up to check the yard, they actually found footprints. They weren't normal tracks though. They had 6 toes. Nobody had any idea what this animal could be. And other people in town started seeing it too, always describing that same weird hopping movement. But then, just as fast as the reports began, they stopped. What was that creature hopping around Enfield that April? Nobody knows. But it's got to be one of the strangest cryptid stories I've ever heard of. In September 1952 in Flatwoods, West Virginia, 2 young brothers, Edward and Fred May, along with their friend Tommy Hare, saw a streak of light go across the sky and crash into a hill nearby. Grabbed their mom, and a couple other kids joined too, as they all went to see what it was. When they got to the top of the hill, the air smelled like burnt metal. Then their flashlights hit something in the dark. They saw this giant figure, way taller than a man, maybe 7 feet tall. It had a glowing red face and a very oddly shaped head. They described it like a spade on a playing card. Its body looked like it was wearing a dark cloak or a skirt. The thing didn't appear to have feet, it just kind of floated toward them. The group immediately turned and booked it back down the hill, but the story didn't end there. See, for days afterward, the people who were there got really sick. They were puking, their throats were all scratched up and sore. Later on, the government tried to say they just saw a barn owl sitting on a tree limb and got scared by the shadows, but none of the witnesses were buying that lazy excuse. An owl isn't 7 feet tall, and looking at an owl doesn't make you sick to your stomach for a week. The Frogmen of Loveland, Ohio. Sounds more like a meme than a genuine cryptid report, but several people really did claim to see a large bipedal frog in Loveland, Ohio. The first time anyone saw it was back in the 50s 1950s, when a guy said he saw 3 little frog people standing by the river. That sighting was reported in the paper, but beyond that, didn't get a lot of coverage. Most people probably just thought he was out of his mind. That is until 1972, when a police officer was driving late at night and saw something huddled by the side of the road. He thought it was an injured animal, but when he got close, the thing stood up. He said it was about 3 or 4 feet tall, had leathery skin, and a face that looked exactly like a giant frog. A different cop saw the same thing a little while later in the same area. Some stories say one of the officers even fired at it, but it hopped away into the water. Years and years later, one of the guys said maybe it was just a big pet iguana that had escaped and lost its tail. That sounds like a good explanation, I guess, but there are a few problems. First, it's way too cold in Ohio for an iguana to be hanging out in the middle of the night. Second, iguanas aren't really known for standing up on 2 legs and hopping.
At number 10, a new deep-sea batfish, what I can only describe as wet ravioli with a face. This dumpling with a face has been called cute all over the internet, so from now on, if I'm ever called cute, I'm taking it as an insult. As Consider Nature on Reddit put it so eloquently, batfish are a benthic anglerfish which can be found on the ocean floor in tropical and subtropical waters worldwide. Unlike the deep-sea anglerfish we usually think of having glowing lures, batfish lures release chemical signals that attract prey. Kinda like if you tried to attract a French person by duct taping some smelly cheese to your forehead. Can confirm this does work, by the way. Batfish pelvic fins are thick and muscular, allowing batfish to use them to walk across the seafloor. They're actually generally poor swimmers. Now this guy probably looks nothing like that when underwater. Like the blobfish, a lot of deep sea fish have bodies that are designed to be squished by intense ocean pressures. I can't confirm this, but I believe that this fellow over here employs a similar strategy to the blobfish in that he has naturally gelatinous tissues that are designed to be compressed and give it a more neutral buoyancy, allowing it to stay at or just above the seafloor very easily. That makes sense since this fella is a bottom dweller. If you're enjoying the video so far, you can support the channel by pressing like, subscribing to Most Amazing, and ringing that notification bell. At number 9, way too many arms. This newly discovered sea creature looks more like a bowl of ramen. In the depths of the northwestern Africa coast, scientists trawling these rawlers grasp at a new discovery. Let's see what I did there. Astrodendron juancarlosi, a newly discovered basket sea star species, a distant cousin of the starfish family with countless arms that intricately weave and wind. With a body resembling a tangle of ropes adorned with pointed calcium bumps, this enigmatic being blends seamlessly with the corals it calls home at depths of 150 to 2,600 feet beneath the waves. At number 8 is the mysterious gelatinous creature spotted in the uncharted reef in the Pacific as recently as June of this year, 2023. Diving into the uncharted oceanic realms 900 miles south of the Hawaiian Islands and 4,600 feet below the surface, researchers stumbled upon a true enigma, a vibrant, bright orange creature with 3 arm-like extensions atop its head. Resembling a jellyfish but defying convention, initially this creature was thought to be a helmet jellyfish, but after the researchers reached out to an expert on dry land, it was discovered that it's actually a rare species belonging to the Bathychorus genus. This bizarre species had only been seen once before, back in 2015, and it still remains nameless, a true mystery of the deep sea ocean. At number 7 is the slender shrimp, the 8-foot-tall tentacled and faceless shrimp in a suit that stalks from the shadows. I'm kidding, but that is what this shrimp is called though. Deep beneath the waves of the Sea of Japan, a peculiar sight unfolded. Imagine, if you will, a minuscule shrimp adorned with crimson spots gracefully navigating the seafloor's rocky expanse. Its delicate, almost see-through body and spindly antennae gave it an air of mystique. Now what's fascinating is that this shrimp, dubbed A. exilis being Latin for slender, hence the terrible opening joke, is no ordinary find. It's an entirely new species, a remarkable addition to the ocean's inventory of life. At number 6 is the faceless fish. Shoot, I should have saved my Slenderman joke for this one. Oh well. In the uncharted depths of Australia's coast, a team of scientists embarked on a daring journey. Their mission? To unveil the mysteries hidden beneath the waves. And unveiled they did, a remarkable discovery, a fish like no other, lacking eyes and a discernible face. The faceless cusk, as it was affectionately named, emerged from the icy darkness, captivating all who laid eyes on it. But hold on tight, because here comes a twist. The faceless wonder wasn't entirely new to the world. It turned out to be a cusk eel, Typhonus nassus, or blind hake, in the language of ancient Greece.
Dinosaurs are extinct, right? I mean, of course they are. Well, you wouldn't think so if you saw a Chinese giant salamander. They really do look like creatures that would have been roaming the earth during the time of the dinosaurs, and they actually did. The Chinese giant salamander has been around since the Jurassic period, about 170 million years ago. There are two main types of giant salamanders, one native to Japan and the other native to China. The Chinese giant salamanders are slightly larger. In fact, they're the world's largest amphibians living in freshwater habitats. It can reach almost 6 feet in length, weighing a little over 100 pounds. Now, seeing a salamander that big and hefty would be alarming enough as it is, but there's another freaky thing about these creatures, and that's the sounds that they're known to make. Their vocalizations have been described in a few different ways. Sometimes it sounds like a bark or a hissing sound, but most eerily is the high-pitched crying noise they're said to make, almost like a human child. Gotta say though, I kind of find these things cute in their own odd way. Just look at this absolute beast of a fish. Has this image been photoshopped? Well, actually, no. This is a real giant catfish, the Mekong giant catfish, one of the largest species of freshwater fish in the entire world. These things can grow as big as a small car, easily hitting lengths of 9.8 feet and weighing up to 770 pounds. Not only that, but they've also been known to live for a pretty long time. Some have been around for decades, up to 60 years. That's a pretty good lifespan for a fish. In terms of appearance, they're not really all that flashy. They look kind of weird. They have this distinctive silver color that makes them stand out. Their mouths are broad and equipped for bottom feeding. They're built for efficiency rather than looks, obviously. One of the largest freshwater fish ever caught was an 8'10" female Mekong in Thailand, weighing 646 pounds in 2005. The giant golden crowned flying fox is a species of megabat native to the Philippines. It's one of the largest bat species in the world. Its wingspan can reach up to 5.5 feet. So this thing could easily wrap its wings around a fully grown person, and picturing that kind of makes me shudder. Now, luckily, these are one of those bat species that do have those cute dog-like faces. If these things looked more like a vampire bat, I'd just never go to this part of the world. Watching these things fly through the air though, they almost look like gargoyles or some kind of prehistoric beast. They have some pretty gnarly claws too, but luckily they don't eat meat. The last thing you'd need is one of these things swooping down from the air, trying to take a bite out of your head or flying off with your dog. Next up, we have the coelacanth. And aside from how creepy these things are, there's an interesting story behind them. The coelacanth was discovered, or actually rediscovered, in the deep waters of the Indian Ocean in 1938. And I say rediscovered because until that point, only fossils had been found. Scientists at the time thought that they'd gone extinct millions of years before. On December 23rd of 1938, a living coelacanth was found in a local fisherman's net. They'd been swimming around for 340 to 4 million years. That's pretty spectacular, but kind of hard to believe. Another cool thing about these ancient fish is that many scientists think these things bridged the gap between fish and four-legged land-dwelling animals. They have 4 fins that extend away from their bodies, almost like legs, and they move in that alternating pattern you see with 4-legged animals as well. The harpy eagle. This is one terrifying bird, especially if you're a monkey living in South America, because these birds eat them as well as sloths and porcupines. Harpy eagles are named after harpies, large winged monsters from Greek mythology, and the name really fits. These eagles are true apex predators, some of the largest eagles in the world, with wingspans of up to 6.5 feet across. They live in rainforests across South America. Female harpy eagles are larger than the males, growing up to 36 to 40 inches and weighing in around 13 to 20 pounds. Harpy eagles' talons 5 inches long, larger than a grizzly's, and they're incredibly powerful, able to crush their prey's bones in an instant. They're very elusive birds. It's really rare to see them in their natural habitat. They're just good at staying hidden, and rather than soaring above the trees like most birds, they fly under the forest canopy, sometimes reaching speeds of up to 50 miles per hour before swooping down to snatch up their prey. The kangaroo, aka vampire fish, native to the Amazon basin. These are a type of small catfish known to swim up inside people's bodies through their sensitive areas. They're small, usually around 6 to 15 centimeters long. They have a slim, elongated body and are kinda translucent, so great, they're even harder to see. They're known to be parasitic and are attracted to the smell of urine and other bodily fluids, hence the swimming up into the body thing, and they get the vampire nickname because they feast on the BLOOD of other fish. They often attach themselves to gill openings of larger fish to feed. They're horrifying. Now, apparently they don't swim up into people intentionally. Most recorded cases involve the fish accidentally entering body orifices, but I mean, how do we really know what these things are thinking? This does not look like a real fish, at least not one that exists today, but it does, unfortunately. This is a Goliath tigerfish. It's a freshwater fish native to Africa. If the razor-sharp monster teeth didn't give it away for you, these are predatory animals. These fish found in the Congo River Basin can get pretty big too, up to 5 feet in length, with the heaviest on record weighing in at 154 pounds. That is too big for something that looks this ferocious. In terms of diet, these things will eat pretty much any fish they can overpower. They've even been known to attack humans. The Goliath tigerfish has very little to worry about. Their only predators are the Nile crocodile. They're often seen as the greatest freshwater game fish in the world. The tarantula hawk. Alright, so based on the name, you're probably thinking we either have a flying tarantula or a hawk with some spider-like abilities. Both of those sound terrifying, but this creature is neither a bird nor a spider. It's actually a wasp, a really big, scary wasp that paralyzes its prey with its stinger before laying an egg inside them, which hatches into a larva that then eats the still living host from the inside. So they're kind of like the real life version of the xenomorph from Alien. If that's not terrifying to you, then you probably just haven't seen Alien. These things are some of the largest wasps in the world, reaching up to 2.5 inches long, and their legs are capped with hooked claws, which they use to grapple their victims, and their sting is said to be one of the most painful in the world. Great news, by the way, you can find them on every continent aside from Europe and Antarctica. I really would prefer it if these things didn't exist. Next up, we have South American monkeys. There are multiple species of monkeys in South America, but there's always been this question as to how they got there. Why is that? Well, because it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense why they're there. The fact that there are monkeys in South America is something scientists have actually been confused about for a long time. Primates would have traveled to South America on 2 separate occasions. The first wave went extinct, and they have no connection to the monkeys seen in South America today. So as for how they got there, it's always been a bit of a mystery, but it looks like they might have rafted from Africa around 35 to 32 million years ago. There's just no evidence of them traveling all the way from Africa to South America by land. There are no fossil records of monkeys traveling along the long route they would have needed to take. As for what these rafts would have been, they could have been pieces of land masses that broke off from the mainland. They could have also been trapped on pieces of vegetation that floated out to sea during storms. It does seem kind of far-fetched when you hear about it, but we gotta remember the continents of Earth were much closer together than they are in modern times, and water levels were also shallower. So this theory isn't out of the realm of possibility. Alright, the glass frog can be found in the Amazon rainforest. They're incredibly weird. These things are crazy looking. Maybe not at first glance, you might just think they're an adorable little green frog, and they are, but how do you think they get the glass frog name? Well, there are many different species of glass frog, and many of them have translucent underbellies, so you can actually see their heart and their liver and their intestines through their skin. It's icky, really trippy, and it's not always just their bellies that are translucent. Sometimes their entire body has this at least semi-translucency to it. They look a bit like gummy frogs. Really fascinating animals. Now, the reason for this translucency is that it helps with camouflage. The outline of their bodies becomes softer and less visible, and birds tend to attack translucent frogs less often than non-transparent ones. Another super fascinating thing about these frogs, you can actually conceal the red blood cells in their livers. They do this when prey is near because it makes them appear even more transparent. Somehow they're actually able to control the location, the density, and packing of their red cells without negative consequences like it clotting up. It's pretty wild.
Next, in our number 10 spot, we have the Phronema. Meet one of the ocean's most inscrutable creatures, Phronema. This barbaric little parasite has earned its place in deep-sea horror stories for the way it creates a mobile nursery for its young. How, you ask? By hijacking an unfortunate salp, turning it into a hollow barrel, and crawling inside to navigate the ocean, food and water at the ready. Often linked to the chest-bursting xenomorph from the Alien franchise, this open ocean parasite carves out the insides of jelly-like salps, transforming its victim into a barrel-shaped pram. Hunkering down in this hollowed-out home, they then drift through the water, protected from predators, and conveniently stocked with a roomy nursery for its offspring. Scientists have debated whether the salp remains truly alive during its forced retirement as a floating hostel, but one thing is certain: the host's insides are pretty much stripped away. Male Phronema even towed around their own barrels, possibly to attract mates. Whatever the reason, it is a chilling reminder that life in the deep can be far stranger and more horrifying than anything we dream up for the big screen. Next, we are talking about the alien eel. Nobody goes fishing expecting to face a mouthful of nightmares, but that's what happened to one angler in New York's Hudson Valley. He yanked an eel-like beast out of the water only to discover a round, suction cup mouth filled with concentric rows of razor-sharp teeth. That aquatic horror show turned out to be a sea lamprey, a parasitic creature that latches onto other fish, punctures their skin, and drains their fluids. The fisherman's reaction was simple and blunt: weirdest thing I've ever caught. After seeing the unsettling photos, the internet couldn't agree more, with plenty of people likening it to an alien from a sci-fi movie. It is just safe to say that this is one species no one wants to tangle with again. Next, we are talking about the long-nosed creature. Deep in the cold waters off of Newfoundland in Canada, a fisherman hauled up something that looked more like a mutant cartoon character than a fish. With a floppy, rubbery snout and what seemed like wings on its sides, the catch was almost too bizarre to believe. The baffled crew initially guessed it might be a platypus, until marine biologists identified it as a long-nosed chimera. These cartilaginous cousins of sharks and rays are rarely seen because they lurk in deep, dark waters up to 3,000 meters down. They even come equipped with a venomous spine, which means anyone who accidentally reels one in should handle it with extreme caution. For this fisherman, it was enough weirdness to last a lifetime. Next, we are talking about the mysterious Canadian creature. Some mysteries remain unsolved for years, just like the bizarre fish caught in 2009 from a vast underwater canyon off Nova Scotia called the Gully. This dark brown creature had an oversized head, curved teeth, and eyes so small they barely even seemed functional. Scientists tried to identify it through DNA analysis and got only a big, shrugging no match. Fast forward over a decade when researchers exploring the mid-Atlantic ridge reeled in similar specimens and finally cracked the code. A new species of whalefish. Living in the midnight zone over 3,300 feet deep, these fish probably don't see much, literally, as their tiny eyes lack lenses, but they sure left scientists with a fascinating deep-sea puzzle that took 15 years to solve. Next, we are talking about the sea pencil. Off the coast of Victoria, Australia, an angler lifted a creature so odd, social media users couldn't stop coming up with wild guesses. Its elongated, ribbed body ended in a bright orange hook, and the more you stared at it, the more alien it seemed. Enter the sea pencil, an invertebrate from the same group as corals and sea anemones. It spends most of its life partially buried in the sea floor, filter feeding for tasty particles. Experts say it can reach lengths of up to 46 centimeters, but nobody really expects you to casually reel one in. When you're fishing for standard fare like snapper, finding a living writing utensil from the ocean is definitely not on the wish list.
At number 5, Antarctic creatures under ice. Scientists accidentally stumbled upon a real-life frozen party under a colossal 900-meter thick ice shelf. The scientists have been drilling through Antarctic ice for cores, only to discover sponge-like creatures and other potential unknown species hanging out on a boulder at the sea floor. Now here's the kicker. These creatures aren't the animals we're used to, since these extremophiles are chilling, literally, in an environment previously thought to be uninhabitable. Complete darkness, freezing cold, and no snacks. And yet, these critters are living proof that life can thrive in the most unlikely places. But despite the fact that they're right there, scientists are still baffled about how they could possibly survive down there, having been found a whopping 1,500 kilometers away from any source of light for photosynthesis. So what's the deal with these Antarctic partygoers? How did they end up there, and what's on the menu? At number 4 is the translucent blind eel. This nightmare fish was only discovered just recently, so there's not a whole lot of information about this dude just yet. But from what I can find, it's thought to be a new type of blind cusk eel. So it's not really a true eel, but a type of bony fish. It was found 3 miles below the surface, and its skin is described as loose, flabby, and gelatinous. Blind cusk eels also maintain the traits of their young into adulthood. Think salamanders versus axolotls. Their breeding habits are also pretty interesting. When encountering a female blind cusk eel, the male will give her something called a spermatophore, which is basically a little capsule full of sperm, so she can fertilize her eggs when she chooses rather than laying them, and she'll eventually give birth to live young. Big shout out to Yellow Bloods on Reddit for consolidating all of this information. At number 3, tripod fish. In the depths of the ocean, a strange character takes the stage, the tripod fish. This deep sea oddity stands tall on elongated fins, defying the slow currents near the ocean floor. It's an odd looking yet calculated stance, standing on the substrate facing the current and piercing about 3 feet above the sea floor with its elongated fins, elevating it high enough as to be affected by the deep sea ocean current, which is almost non-existent on or slightly above the ocean floor. Up high enough where there's more current, these elongated rays like mystical tendrils shift from stiff to fluid depending on whether or not it's in hunting mode or swimming mode. As if the spectacle wasn't enough, the tripod fish sports pectoral fins that reach out like inquisitive antennae, feeling its way through the dark waters. This creature's bizarre adaptations remind us that even in the most uncharted corners, life still finds a way to mesmerize and thrive. At number 2 is the terrifying translucent high-fin lizardfish. If you're scared of what lurks in the depths of the ocean, look away now. The deep sea lizardfish with their innumerable razor-sharp teeth are apex predators of the midnight zone, lurking over 3,000 feet below the surface. Cold and dark, they thrive in temperatures around 38 degrees Fahrenheit. These ambush masters feast on anything that swims by, including their own kind. Remarkably, they're also hermaphrodites, so no mate goes unnoticed. And at number 1, a new 10-legged crustacean discovered on China again in June of this year. Deep within the mysterious forests of China, a peculiar discovery has emerged, a tiny crab with 10 legs. Huddled in muddy puddles, these enigmatic crustaceans, which are now named Cinelopodemon curatum, have been quietly dwelling beneath the rocks in Duqiaoshan Forest Park, undetected until now. What sets them apart besides their leg count is their distinctive body shape, a bluntly angular form in a world of pointy relatives. Now, these newfound inhabitants of the puddle realm aren't alone. Researchers speculate that there might be more of these curious crabs waiting to be unveiled in neighboring provinces. Let this tale serve as a reminder that the world's oddities are often hidden in plain sight, just waiting for curious mind to take a peek under the rocks and bring them to light.
There are still crazy things going on in Chernobyl to this day, decades after the explosion of the reactor at the nuclear power plant in April 1986. Now, animals and nature have rightfully been affected in a big way. According to a study that began in 1991, the organisms responsible for decomposition and replenishing organic matter back into the ecosystem, such as insects, fungi, and microbes, are presenting symptoms of radioactive contamination, which isn't too shocking, but still isn't good. One of the most prominent areas of this effect has been called the Bloody Red Forest. It's a set of woodland where all the pine trees turned a blood red color right after the meltdown, and then died not long after. Now, it's pretty, don't get me wrong, but it's completely unnatural and has caused some issues. Now, 15 to 20 years after they were exposed to radiation and died, these trees were not decaying, when at this point, normal trees would be long gone. Due to this, scientists decided to run some tests by filling specially prepared garbage bags with leaf litter from uncontaminated areas, making sure there were no insects or decomposers present, and then leaving the bags out in both contaminated and uncontaminated wooded areas in the exclusion zone for nearly a year to check the decomposition rates of the leaves. Now, bags left in uncontaminated areas were as expected, with normal rates of decomposition between 70 to 90% of the leaves decomposing. But the leaves in contaminated areas retained 60% of their original weight, indicating much less activity by natural decomposers. Now, this suggests that the radiation exposure has a detrimental effect on the ability of the Chernobyl ecosystem to replenish itself with nutrients, which could be causing the stunting of tree growth that has been recorded. But with this, comes another problem. The leaves in contaminated areas stayed intact and dry even after almost a year, and this could present a fire hazard, which in turn presents a danger of radioactive contaminants being spread outside the exclusion zone by forest fires. So that is scary and just not good at all. Then there's how this affected all the animals. According to a 2011 study in Biological Conservation, Chernobyl caused genetic mutations in plants and animals increased by a factor of 20. Among breeding birds in that region, rare species suffered disproportionate effects from the explosion's radiation compared to common species. Now, further research is needed to understand how the increased mutations affect species' reproductive rates, population size, genetic diversity, and other survival factors, but it definitely affected animals in a negative way. In 2016, a study found that the eastern tree frogs in the Chernobyl exclusion zone exhibited different characteristics than their neighboring cousins, and in 2023, another study discovered distinct genetic differences between Chernobyl dogs and dogs living only 10 miles away in Chernobyl City. Now, not all the animals living around Chernobyl are entirely wild, as there are around 900 stray dogs, mostly descended from those left behind when people evacuated the area. Veterinarians, radiation experts, and volunteers from a group called the Dogs of Chernobyl captured the dogs, vaccinated them against diseases, and tagged them. Now, in addition to the tags, some dogs are fitted with radiation detector collars. Now, the dogs offer a way to map radiation across the Chernobyl exclusion zone and study the ongoing effects of the accident. While scientists generally can't get a close look at individual wild animals in the zone, they can monitor the dogs closely, and they are, of course, radioactive. Visitors to the area are advised to avoid petting the dogs to minimize radiation exposure, no matter how cute they are. Now, these dogs have increased rates of cataracts because the eyes are the first tissues to show signs of chronic exposure to ionizing radiation. Now, not all is lost on these dogs though, as the unique genetic diversity of these dogs makes them ideal candidates for future studies, seeking to understand the long-term genetic health effects of highly radioactive environments on populations of large mammals, especially in understanding the biological underpinnings of human survival in regions of high and continuous environmental assault, the researchers said. So, I guess that's a plus. Then there's the birds. While there are plenty of them in the Chernobyl exclusion zone, 489 different species to be exact, they are examples of animals that still face problems from radiation exposure. A study of barn swallows from 1991 to 2006 indicated birds in the exclusion zone displayed more abnormalities than birds from a controlled sample, including deformed beaks, albinistic feathers, bent tail feathers, and deformed air sacs. Now, birds in the zone had less reproductive success, and these birds often had smaller brains, malformed sperm, and cataracts, presumably as a result of radiation-related genetic mutations. Now, if you were already scared of spiders, these ones will freak you out even more. The spiders here are radioactive as they build their webs to catch their prey. They add to the dangerous environment of the forest. These webs are not like normal spider webs. In fact, they are woven in abstract ways that suggest genetic mutation is at hand. Now, they're also highly radioactive themselves, making them a danger for any non-radioactive animal to touch. Now, who knew spiders could get 100 times scarier? But that's not the only scary mutated animal there. According to Slate in the early 90s, which was just a few years after the incident, radiation levels in the wild boar that died near Chernobyl were more than 2,000 times what's considered safe. And even today, eating animals from inside the exclusion zone is still pretty hazardous, as a person might be exposed to radiation levels that are dozens of times higher than what's safe. Then in 2016, a video went viral of a catfish swimming around the cooling pond of the Chernobyl power plant. Very few mutations lead to extra large size, explains University of South Carolina radiation specialist Dr. Timothy Masu. Instead, they grow less efficiently, they're less capable of catching food, and they tend to not live as long. Now, that's why it's shocking that it's so large, and I would not want to mess with a fish that big. Then, as of 2015, there had been almost 20,000 cases of thyroid cancer reported in people who were exposed at the time of the incident. And
approximately 5,000 of these thyroid cancers are likely attributed to them drinking fresh milk containing radioactive iodine from cows that had eaten contaminated grass in the first few weeks following the incident. Yep, you heard that right. The cows created radioactive milk. Now in 2018, it was said that Ukraine still has radioactivity levels up to 5 times the official safe limit, research suggests. Now scientists sampled cow's milk from private farms and homes in the Ravine region, about 125 miles away from the site of the catastrophic explosion. Researchers found levels of radioactive caesium in milk above Ukraine's safe limit for adults of 100 becquerel per liter at 6 of 14 settlements studied. Now the highest levels found were about 500 BQ liter, 5 times over the limit for adults, and more than 12 times that for the young. The study was carried out at the University of Exeter and the Ukrainian Institute of Agricultural Radiology. More than 30 years after the Chernobyl disaster, people are still routinely exposed to radioactive caesium when consuming locally produced staple foods, including milk, in Chernobyl-affected areas in Ukraine, said Dr. Irina Lebunska of University of Exeter. Though the level of soil contamination in the studied areas is not extremely high, radioactive caesium continues to accumulate in milk and other foods. Now this is just one of the lasting effects, which is horrific. On a lighter note though, an endangered wild horse is making a comeback thanks to Chernobyl. The Smithsonian's National Zoo and Conservation Biology Institute called the Przewalski's horses the last truly wild horse. Its once large population that ranged across large areas of Asia and Europe was eventually reduced to almost nothing. When Lee Boyd and Catherine A. Hope edited a book about the animal in 1994, the most recent wild sighting had occurred in the late 60s, leading the authors to declare them extinct in the wild. But British ecologists Mike Wood and Nick Beresford, who specialize in studying the effects of radiation on Chernobyl's wildlife, observed that the Przewalski's horses is thriving within the exclusion zone. In the late 1990s, about 30 of these horses were released in the Ukrainian side of the zone, and the population has increased to more than 200. Based on camera trap images, Wood estimated that some of the original horses, identified by their brand markings, are still alive, and photos of juvenile horses also indicate that the population is expanding. And finally, if you didn't know, Earth has both a magnetic field and an atmosphere that protects us from dangerous radiation. Now NASA knows that astronauts on the International Space Station get exposed to 20 times the radiation we get down here on the planet. So after discovering that a fungus thriving around the heavily radiated Chernobyl disaster site consumes radiation through radiosynthesis, they decided to experiment with it in space, and over the course of a month they found out that the fungus actually blocks radiation literally by eating it. The experiments on the ISS revealed that it was utilizing melanin to transform radioactive gamma rays into chemical energy. Now this is actually really exciting because this ability may turn out to be useful in future space exploration. NASA is hoping that the fungus may be used to both shield equipment and the crew from deadly radiation during long space flights, and even more importantly, help clean up radioactive waste.
For decades, no one could agree if it was even an animal. Dickinsonia fossils are oval-shaped, ribbed impressions found in rocks over 550 million years old. They come from the Ediacaran period before the Cambrian explosion. The creature looked like a flattened pancake with symmetrical segments radiating from a central line. Scientists argued endlessly about what it was. Some thought it was a jellyfish, others said it was a fungus. Some believed it was a colony of microbes, others claimed it was not an animal at all. The problem was that this creature lacked clear features like a mouth, gut, or limbs. In 2018, researchers discovered traces of cholesterol molecules preserved in the fossil. Cholesterol is associated with animal cells. That finally confirmed this was an animal, but it still did not fit into any known animal group. It represented a completely extinct lineage that did not survive into modern times. This showed that early animals followed evolutionary paths that later disappeared entirely. For a long time, it was dismissed as a myth. Local people in the Congo rainforest spoke of a strange animal called the forest giraffe. European explorers thought it was folklore. In the early 1900s, physical evidence finally emerged. The okapi looked like like a horse-sized animal with zebra-like stripes on its legs, but it had a long neck and a skull structure similar to a giraffe. When scientists examined it, they realized it was the giraffe's closest living relative. The problem was that it looked nothing like one. It lived in dense forests instead of open savannas. It had adapted to a completely different environment. Before its discovery, no one suspected giraffes had forest-dwelling relatives. The Okapi forced scientists to reconsider giraffe evolution and how flexible large mammals could be. For over a century, scientists argued about its teeth. Helicoprion was a prehistoric shark-like fish that lived over 270 million years ago. Its most famous feature was a spiral of teeth arranged like a circular saw. The problem was that no one knew where the spiral was located. Some thought it was on the nose, others thought it was on the tail, some placed it inside the throat. There was no modern equivalent. Only with modern CT scanning did researchers finally understand the structure. The spiral was part of the lower jaw, growing continuously and curling inward as new teeth formed. Helicoprion did not fit into known shark groups. It belonged to a now extinct lineage of cartilaginous fish with bizarre feeding mechanisms. Its discovery showed that ancient oceans were filled with predators far stranger than anything alive today. It was supposed to be extinct. Coelacanths were known only from fossils dated to over 66 million years ago. They were considered a classic example of an evolutionary dead end. Then, in 1938, a living coelacanth was caught off the coast of South Africa. Scientists were stunned. The fish had fleshy, limb-like fins similar to those of early land vertebrates. It had a unique jointed skull and an oil-filled organ instead of a swim bladder. It did not fit modern fish categories. The coelacanth was a living fossil, but not a primitive one. It was highly specialized and well adapted to deep-sea water environments. Its survival forced scientists to rethink extinction assumptions and evolutionary stasis. At just over 3 feet tall, it shocked the world. In 2003, researchers discovered skeletal remains of a small human-like species on the Indonesian island of Flores. The species was named Homo floresiensis, often called the Hobbit. It had a small brain but sophisticated stone tools. It lived surprisingly recently, possibly as late as 50,000 years ago. Scientists argued whether it was a diseased modern human or a separate species. Further analysis showed it had unique skeletal traits not seen in Homo sapiens. It did not fit existing human categories. It represented a separate branch of the human family tree. Its discovery showed that multiple human species coexisted far more recently than once believed. Its face looks like a creature from science fiction. The star-nosed mole has 22 fleshy tentacles around its nose, each packed with sensory receptors. It is the fastest eating mammal known, capable of identifying and consuming prey in milliseconds. Its nose functions as a touch-based sensory organ unlike anything else in mammals. When it was first studied, scientists struggled to classify its sensory system. It showed that mammals could evolve sensory adaptations far beyond traditional sight and smell.